Good afternoon and welcome to our regular council meeting of March 27th, 2023. I'll call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. First item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement. The town of Coaldale acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot peoples of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot peoples past, present, and future, while recognizing their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The town of Coaldale is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Agenda item 1.2, conflict of interest declaration. Are there any pecuniary and non-pecuniary in the room this afternoon? None declared. Thank you. Item 2.0, acceptance of the agenda for the regular council meeting for March 27, 2023. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get someone to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Pickering. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3.0, 3.1, I should say, regular council meeting minutes for March 13th, 2023. Were there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I get someone to approve the minutes from the March 13th meeting? Councillor Saylor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So just before we start our first public hearing, just for our viewers at home, just to explain that we are in temporary council chambers here until hopefully the first meeting in June, when we'll have our chambers ready. So it's going to be a little bit of a tight atmosphere here tonight, but we'll get through it. Okay, I'm going to call the first public hearing, agenda item 6.1, land use bylaw amendment. I'll call that to order at 5:04 p.m. And this is regarding, again, agenda item 6.1, land use bylaw amendment 863-P-02-23 regarding Civic Square rezoning from residential R1A to direct control. And presenting this afternoon, we have our senior planner, Hailey Winder. Hailey, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So proposed bylaw 863-P-02-23 is a bylaw to redesignate a portion of town-owned land located south of the Civic Square building from residential R1A to direct control in order to accommodate the development of the Civic Square outdoor space. The lands are legally described as lots 13, 14, and 15 of Block 12, Plan 6476AA. Generally, this redesignation aligns with the town plan, specifically Policy 3.16, which prioritizes downtown design and placemaking. The direct control district is provided for in the land use bylaw in order to provide a means whereby council may regulate and control the use, development, or subdivision of land or buildings within a specific area of the municipality where the circumstances relating to the development or subdivision of such site are such that the regulation and control by use of other land use districts in the bylaw is inadequate considering the long-range planning goals and the greater public interest. The bylaw received first reading at the March 13th, 2023 regular council meeting. Since then, notice of the bylaw was disseminated and circulated to the adjacent landowners within 60 meters and publicized within the Sunny South News for 2 consecutive weeks prior to the public hearing. Additionally, it was also posted on the town's Engaged Coaldale online platform. At this time, no responses have been received.
Okay, thank you. And just for our viewers at home, can you explain where those R1A lots were located?
The R1A lots are located south of the Civic Square building, and they are located on the west portion. So there's 2 in the bylaw amendment. You can see the location map specifically. 3 lots located directly to the south and west.
Okay, thank you. And can you just give us some examples of what the direct control will allow council to do, please?
Absolutely. So the direct control allows council to regulate and manage what type of development they would like specifically on those lands. And due to the comprehensive nature of this proposed Civic Square outdoor space, it allows council to provides those means of regulation and control in terms of that development.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up to council. Are there any questions for Hailey? Okay. Can you explain how this public hearing was advertised?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So after the first reading, notice was sent out to the adjacent landowners, whereby the first reading allowed council to schedule the public hearing. So then we had the date, we circulated that date to the adjacent landowners. Also, it was publicized in the Sunny South News as per the MGA 2 consecutive weeks prior to the public hearing, and additionally on the town's Engage Coaldale platform.
Did we receive any correspondence from anybody?
None at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Last opportunity for questions for Hailey. Seeing none, I'll ask council if they have sufficient information to make a decision on Land Use Bylaw Amendment 863-P-02-23. Okay, thank you. I hereby declare the public hearing regarding Land Use Bylaw Amendment 863-P-02-23 closed at 5:06 p.m.
Sure. Sure. Caitlin.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 6.2. I'm going to call the public hearing to order at 5:08 p.m. regarding agenda item 6.2 Land Use Bylaw Amendment 864-P-02-23 regarding Civic Square rezoning from commercial C1 to direct control. And again, we have our senior planner, Hailey Winder, presenting. Hailey, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in conjunction with proposed bylaw 863-P-02-23, proposed bylaw 864-P-02-23 is to redesignate that portion of town-owned land located south and east of Civic Square from commercial C1 to direct control in order to again accommodate that proposed Civic Square outdoor space. The lands are legally described as lots 18, 19, and 20 of Block 12, Plan 6476AA. Again, this aligns with the town plan policies and direction as stated earlier. And the bylaw has received first reading at the March 13th, 2023 regular council meeting. As a result of that, notice was circulated again to the adjacent landowners, actually as a joint notice of public hearing, as the two bylaws relate. That was circulated to adjacent landowners within 60 meters, advertised in the Sunny South News for 2 consecutive weeks prior to the public hearing tonight, and was published on the Town of Coaldale online engagement platform. No responses at this time have been received.
Thank you. Any questions for Hailey? Then I'll ask the question. Does council have sufficient information to make a decision on Land Use Bylaw Amendment 864-P-02-23? Thank you. I hereby declare the public hearing regarding Land Use Bylaw 864-P-02-23 closed at 5:09 p.m. So our third and last public hearing that we're having is at 5:15 is advertised for. So we're just going to jump ahead on the agenda. And information items, let's go to 12.1. And that's regarding the Rehoboth annual golf tournament request for sponsorship. And the date for that. Can someone tell me the date? Because I didn't print that one.
May 27th.
May 27th. And Kaylin, can you open that up for me on yours, because I don't have room for my laptop here, so if you can just read to me what they're asking for there, please.
Certainly. This is an annual request that we receive, and it would come out of the discretionary council promotion fund. And so we do take this to council on an annual basis to see whether this is something council wishes to take out of their discretionary promotional fund. The cost last year was $1,050, and then the cost this year for the same level of sponsorship, which is that of silver, be a team of 4 players at a cost of $1,175. In terms of the date, it is Saturday, May 27th, starting at shotgun start at 1:30.
Thank you. And then when I was taking a look at it from the office, it conflicts with our coffee chat, our third coffee chat that's booked for that same afternoon. So if this is something that council wants to participate in, then we can either carry on with the coffee chat and some can go to that. And then if 4 people want to go golfing, we can do that by will of council. So I'll open that up. Is there anybody that's interested in sponsoring the Rehoboth Golf Tournament for $1,175? Councillor Saylor, you're in favor? Okay. So if we were to send 4 players, who would be willing to go to that? I'll go. Okay, the other 2 golfers.
I won't be able to go.
The other 2 golfers, and if this passes, we'll have to talk about more then. Okay, so Councillor Saylor has a motion on the floor to approve participation in the Rehoboth Golf Classic as a silver sponsor and enter a team of 4 players at a cost of $1,175. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Avery opposed. Motion is carried. Thank you. And then moving on to information item 12.2. That's regarding the American Public Works Association, APWA, National Public Works Week, May 21st to May 27th, 2023. And as part of that, the town has planned an event on June 10th that will celebrate Public Works Month with we're going to have what's called a big rig petting zoo. And we're going to mirror something like what they do in Lethbridge, where our operations department brings in all their large equipment. We're going to do it at the Sportsplex, I believe, in the parking lot. And then we're going to invite some of the contractors from the area that the town of Coaldale works with to bring their equipment. And then kids come, and the operators of said equipment will be there to give not necessarily a demonstration, but let the kids sit in the seat and take a look at it, and they'll explain what the equipment is used for. So that's going to be taking place on June 10th. Can I get someone to make a motion to adopt information item 12.2 as circulated? Okay, thank you. Councillor Pickering, any discussion? See none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so moving back up to agenda item 6.3, I'm going to call the public hearing to order at 5:15 p.m. So regarding agenda item 6.3, the West Coaldale Area Structure Plan Land Use Bylaw Amendment 865-P-02-23 and West Coaldale Area Structure Plan Bylaw 856-P-07-22. The public hearing, I'll be chairing. My name is Mayor Van Rijn, and all questions and comments shall be directed through myself. Addressed to the chair will be Mayor Van Rijn. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider input on the West Coaldale Area Structure Plan Land Use Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 865-P-02-23 856-23 and West Coaldale Area Structure Plan Bylaw 856-P-07-22. The public hearing procedures are as follows. Council is here to listen to the information presented and make a decision on the matter that is the subject of this hearing. This is a formal hearing and is not a debate. Everyone wishing to speak who is pre-registered will be given an opportunity to speak once on the matter, as called upon by myself as the chair. Each presenter must state his or her full name, their address, and their interest in this matter, including whether they are in support or non-support. And at the beginning of your presentation, I want you to declare if you're in support or non-support, please. Individuals who do not identify themselves will not be given an opportunity to speak. Presenters are to stay within a suggested 5-minute timeline on the presentation and are encouraged when speaking to keep the presentation to the point and refrain from restating points raised by previous speakers, if possible. If new presentation materials are provided, you may be required to email a copy to our municipal clerk. And what I'm going to do for our viewers at home, Cameron, if I could just get you to skirt over to the other chair, and then I'm going to get whoever wants to speak to go sit in the chair beside Cameron, so that they can watch from home. So at this time, I would ask our Director of Growth and Investment, Cameron Mills, to introduce the subject matter of this public hearing. When you're ready, Cameron, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. So I'm just going to begin by providing a bit of an outline about what it is we're discussing this evening. So again, we are considering bylaw 856-P-0722, which received first reading on July 25th, 2022. And also bylaw 865-P-0223, which was given first reading at the March 13th regular meeting of council. That first bylaw listed is with respect to the area structure plan for this area, and the second one is the corresponding bylaw that's associated with rezoning. And as I engage in my presentation, I'll explain a little bit why we do both. In terms of stakeholder engagement, notification of the bylaws was given in accordance with section 230, 606 and 692 of the Municipal Government Act, revised statutes of Alberta, and the Town of Coaldale Land Use Bylaw. Notice of the hearing was circulated in the Sunny South News for 2 consecutive weeks prior to the public hearing, and additionally, notice of the hearing was posted on the town's engagement platform. External circulations to agencies has occurred with feedback received from the St. Mary River Irrigation District as well as Alberta Health Services. And prior to the public hearing, consultation sessions for the area structure plan in particular were held as follows. First of all, an open house that was town-led occurred back in March 2022, and then an open house which was developer-led occurred in February 23. A summary of both those engagement sessions is incorporated into the area structure plan document that is provided. The document was also circulated internally to other town departments, and no comments or changes were requested from that circulation. Following the advertisement of the public hearing, 3 letters were received by the town at the time of the writing of the report. Those letters were included as an attachment to the report. Additional correspondence, I understand, has also been received by Lana, and that's been provided to council. I will note that in addition to that, I do have 3 letters which were provided to me shortly before the hearing. So when we get into the section of the session that includes that community feedback, if council so desires, I'm happy to read those on behalf of those who provided. So I have a presentation prepared, and I'm just going to start with that. So
Cameron, just before you start, the gentleman sitting underneath the screen, if you want to come move over here, then you can see what's going on, please.
Sure.
So the focus of the presentation is with respect to that area structure plan bylaw, 856-P-0722. Portions of it also include consideration of zoning, and so that'll be factored into consideration of the other bylaw that's provided. So just to provide an outline, I'll talk a little bit about the purpose of an area structure plan, just for council's consideration as well as the general public, so we understand what the purpose of an area structure plan is. Identify the plan location, description of the proposal. The focus of the report will be on something what I call key considerations, and then finally providing a recommendation. So an area structure plan is, according to the Municipal Government Act, Section 633, is a statutory plan for the purpose of providing a framework for subdivision, for subsequent subdivision and development of an area of land. It has to include the sequence of development, the land use proposed for the area, either generally or with respect to specific parts of the area, the density of the population on an approximate basis, and may contain other matters, including matters relating to reserves that council considers necessary. The town plan is a document that provides my department with guidance in terms of the work that we're supposed to do in preparing these area structure plans alongside a developer. And according to the town plan, a statutory plan generally establishing future land use and dealing with the matters in Section 633 of the MGA is provided as an area structure plan. An area structure plan is for a large area and outlines general development goals and patterns. Policy 1.19 of that plan means suggests an area structure plan means a statutory plan in accordance with the MGA that identifies future neighborhoods and where residential, commercial, and institutional and recreational sites will be located in a previously underdeveloped or undeveloped area, and how essential municipal services such as water and sewer systems, roads, and fire protection will be provided. These plans also describe the number of people who are expected to live in the new area and how development will be staged over time. So to move from an area structure plan, including an amendment to an area structure plan, which is what this document is, to getting to the point where service lots exist, there are a number of steps. So first, the approval of the area structure plan or any amendments to an area structure plan needs to occur. There needs to be provision of detailed servicing plans. There needs to be a rezoning application submitted. There needs to be subdivision submission, and there needs to be submission of development permit applications for specific properties. So what we're considering today is number 1 and number 3 together. And the reason we're doing that is that sometimes area structure plans, particularly larger area structure plans that might consider 160 acres or 320 acres, might call for zoning in a general sense, identify residential areas or higher density residential areas or commercial areas, but don't necessarily speak to specific zoning, say R1A zoning, for example. Because this area structure plan is an amendment to an existing area structure plan from a previous generation, what the developer has provided in the area structure plan is reference to specific zonings within the land use bylaw. And because of that, our practice has been to include the rezoning at the same time as the area structure plan consideration. The principal reason for that is that we found in the past that when the area structure plan and the rezoning application are considered separately, folks in the area who might have concerns that want to speak to council, who might not understand the technical language of what an area structure plan is, might ignore the call for consideration of the area structure plan and instead wait until the rezoning application is considered to bring their thoughts forward. And in my opinion, that is more valuable during the area structure plan process, particularly where that area structure plan actually calls for specific types of zonings. And that way, people that have concerns that want to speak to council to the broader issue, regardless of which bylaw it happens to technically reference, get the opportunity to do so. So we find it's a more open and transparent process, and that's why we've lumped them together as we have here. The plan location itself is in the west end of the community. It's west of the existing Westgate subdivision, north of the golf course. Technically, the plan includes 4 parcels, but realistically only proposes changes for 2 of those parcels for residential purposes. And it is within the existing West Area Structure Plan area, which was first developed approximately 20 years ago by the Old Man River Regional Services Commission. So at first reading, which occurred back in July, the proposal was put forward as such, and it featured a single major road extending from 23rd Avenue to 30th Street with higher density residential bordering both sides of 23rd Avenue, and single family residential to the south, and a single looping crescent with rear lanes servicing the interior blocks. The proposal included calls for the R1B zoning for single family throughout, which is a zoning that has approximately a 40-foot lot width, which is of a higher density than what was found in the adjacent Westgate subdivision. Also, a pathway was initially shown along the northern border, separating the higher density parcels from the proposed future commercial. That's ultimately been moved to the south along 23rd Avenue. And additional open space was noted as being required, along with upgrades to the existing stormwater management facility. However, exact location was not finalized pending stormwater design. So the updated plan, and I apologize, that's slightly blurry, but fundamentally the difference between what is proposed now and what was initially proposed back in July of 2022 is that there is a lower overall density than what was originally proposed. So we have fewer multifamily lots. The single family lots in particular are largely shown in the 46 or 50-foot width. So the lots bordering the edges of the subdivision shown here in orange are all going to be in the 50-foot R1A width, which matches the larger lots on the outskirts of the Westgate subdivision. And these lots shown here in yellow are still the R1A zoning, but calling for a 46-foot width minimum, which matches the internal lots found in Westgate over here, as well as in this area. The plan provides greater clarity on provision of park space, in addition to providing for upgrades to the stormwater management facility, showing park dedication along the northern boundary of 23rd Avenue to provide for pedestrian connectivity in the form of a bike path, as well as space for a playground located adjacent to the stormwater management facility again, which will be upgraded as part of subdivision construction. From a streets and roads perspective, what we're proposing here and what's shown in the design includes the following. So we have a 20-meter road right-of-way along 23rd Avenue. Final design of that road top will be dependent on the traffic impact assessment, but a 20-meter road right-of-way is a fairly substantial right-of-way relative to other road sizes within the community. We have 18-meter right-of-ways with those roads which connect to 23rd Avenue, so found here as well as here, and that would include an 11-meter width of asphalt top, and that matches the roads found in the existing Westgate subdivision. There's a 16.5-meter road right-of-way shown in the rest here, basically along the southern portion. So a 16.5-meter road right-of-way with a 10-meter asphalt width. So that matches the roads constructed in the newest components of the Cottonwood area, so the new roads found in there. It also provides for pathway connectivity along the northern portion of 23rd Avenue, which connects from 30th Street to the edge of the develop area, but also includes additional pathway development provided by the developer, extending beyond the existing lot line connecting to Land Lakes Drive and circling the stormwater facility and providing for that pedestrian and cyclist connectivity into the commercial components of the area. So major issues that have been identified throughout the public consultation process is going to be a focus. I provided additional input in my staff report, but I wanted to look at these 4 issues specifically in terms of administration's position on them. The first is provision of multifamily within the broader area. The second has to do with road width and design, including some discussion of provision for driveways on 23rd Avenue. The third was the discussion of partial cash in lieu dedication of municipal reserve as opposed to a full land dedication. And the fourth is a request for a buffer, an MR buffer or some type of buffer between the existing Westgate homes and proposed new homes, which has not been provided in the plan. So beginning first with the multifamily area. So we've received some feedback from residents, particularly within the Westgate subdivision, requesting no multifamily be provided within the area structure plan area. Other feedback has been perhaps somewhat milder, calling for the provision of multifamily to be focused on seniors development. When the town administration is working on these plans, there's a number of documents that we use that guide our direction when we're putting these plans together with council or with developers. Specifically, the town plan. The town plan is also informed by something called the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, which is a broader plan in the province of Alberta. The feedback from that is incorporated into the town plan. And then also take a look at council's broader strategic plan, which was prepared by council to guide council's decision-making for this term. This is not a statutory plan, however, it is, from my perspective, a very important one, so we always consider that as well. So first, key features of the town plan on this issue. The town's plan within the residential, the town plan itself is quite substantial. It's a big document. It includes residential policies, goals, and strategies that the town should use in developing its neighborhoods and for making plans for its expansion. And so a number of those goals and strategies are listed here, and this is not an inclusive list on issues that deal with the idea of multifamily in these new neighborhoods. Just to point out a few, so goal 2A is that new development should support a diversity of housing forms and lot sizes that provide options to residents. Goal 2C is to ensure residential development makes efficient use of infrastructure and achieves densities that support the long-term prosperity of the town. Strategy 2.9 is that multi-unit dwellings shall be dispersed throughout the community and not segregated to an individual area. Strategy 2.1.1, multi-unit dwellings should be designed in a manner to be complementary to existing residential developments, using high-quality building materials, contextual landscaping, and unique architectural features. The reason I put that in is that's a guiding thing that the town administration would then use in terms of how ultimate design of multifamily might be incorporated into the broader area. Strategy 2.1.3, ensure density targets are achieved by the development of a diversity of dwelling styles in neighborhoods, including single detached dwellings, row housing, secondary suites, and apartment buildings. So that is specifically mentioning that our guidance from this plan is to provide for the diversity of housing within specific neighborhoods, not just within the broader town. And lastly, strategy 2.1.4, to balance providing diversity of lot sizes to meet market demand with the provision of higher residential densities. So all of those come from the town plan, and that provides administration, which is myself and my team, with the direction we use to guide a developer's preparation of one of these plans. The town plan itself was a process that occurred over a period of approximately 2 years. And in the development of that plan, there was a very substantial amount of public consultation. If you look at feedback we received in developing that plan, we had over 1,000 instances of engagement with the public in terms of survey respondents, in terms of letters received. And so ultimately what the town plan reflects is the broader guidance that received from the broader community about how the development of the community as a whole should occur from an administration's perspective. Another important point to consider, again, I mentioned the council's strategic plan. So a council's strategic plan provides us with some direction on what council's priorities are going to be over the council term. And within that document, under the community growth and prosperity heading of the council's strategic plan, 2 items are identified in particular. First, proactively facilitate diverse housing options to ensure Coaldale is inclusive for all demographics while providing housing options that allow residents to age in place. So what we mean by age in place is that we're guided by this statement to provide for neighborhoods that allow for an individual to exist and purchase a lot within that neighborhood from sort of start to finish of the life cycle of their ownership of property to as great an extent as possible. So we want to see starter homes that are affordable for folks in their 20s within a neighborhood. We want the ability from someone within that neighborhood to maybe graduate to a larger house, potentially to an estate lot. The potential for multifamily exists within that neighborhood so that all of those needs can be met throughout the life cycle of the individual person. That's what we mean by age in place. And second, to actively facilitate diverse housing options so our town is welcoming to residents of all kinds. So again, when we're designing neighborhoods, we're thinking about those neighborhoods in terms of meeting the broader market that's going to come into Coaldale from surrounding communities. On to issue 2, some issues with respect to road design, particularly as it relates to the provision for driveways on 23rd Avenue. So we first had this issue brought up at the February 2023 developer-led open house. Administration's position on 23rd Avenue is a bit fluid. So that you understand, the traffic impact assessment is not yet completed. That's not a requirement of the area structure plan process. It's something that we have in place prior to final subdivision. That's going to inform administratively what the ultimate design of that road is. Administration's broader concern with respect to the issue of driveways is simply this. Our concern is ensuring a smooth, safe flow of traffic along 23rd Avenue. That is a road that does not currently have any properties fronting onto it, neither in the Westgate subdivision nor in the Waterfront subdivision. And 23rd Avenue, as the community expands, as the neighborhood to the west of 30th Street goes in, potentially some commercial and a substantial amount of additional residential over a period of 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 23rd Avenue represents the only potential road connection between that area from 30th Street and the west to the eastern part of Coaldale that isn't the highway and isn't south of the golf course. Realistically, the area south of the golf course is 25 to 30 years away from development, assuming continued steady growth in the town. So we just want to make sure that when we're designing this road that we're not giving over consideration to short-term market factors when we're considering the broader traffic flow of the area, and that's where administration's concerns come from. The design itself looks for an 11-meter asphalt top, which is relatively substantial road size relative to other roads within the community. It also calls for bump outs of crossing areas. So that's what we're talking about there is within 23rd Avenue, sort of extended sidewalks along the corners, similar to what you see in downtown, perhaps to less of an aggressive extent, but providing for the minimization of the path from the pedestrians to cross that path, acknowledging that the potential for 23rd Avenue traffic in the long term is high. We want to make sure that folks from this neighborhood in Westgate have a safe and easy way to cross that street as things move forward. More broadly, this is not a level of detail that is typically addressed in an area structure plan. It's far in excess of the fact of what would typically be dealt with in an area structure plan. We are not suggesting that if council wants to address this issue, that any area structure plan amendments be made. If council wants to provide broader direction to administration, that will certainly incorporate into our decision making moving forward with respect to that issue. That can be done without amending the plan more broadly. There are a number of compromise solutions that exist. So for example, we could limit the width and frequency of front accesses so as to limit to say single car driveways. We can put a zero lot line for those driveways within the duplex lots in place to ensure that driveways are directly on the lot line, and that maximizes the amount of on-street parking that's also available, for example. So there's all sorts of permutations and combinations of ways that we can address driveways on 23rd Avenue. I want to stress that from administration's perspective, it is not the most important issue. So the issue of partial cash in lieu identification of municipal reserve as opposed to full provision of municipal reserve. So when you look at the Municipal Government Act, it calls for a 10% land dedication from the developable area. That would be provision of municipal reserve. Municipal reserve is largely used for school sites and for parks and playgrounds. And it is always possible to provide some combination of cash in lieu of land dedication or land dedication to meet that requirement. What's being proposed here is approximately 6% of the 10% land dedication in the form of land, and that would leave the remaining 4% to be handled from cash in lieu. So open space upgrades for the subdivision include the bike path within and outside of the subdivision area. So pathway improvements outside of the subdivision area are not factored into this calculation. I'm just going to scroll back real quick here so we can see here. So when we look at municipal reserve dedication, basically what we're looking at is the provision of pathway to the north of 23rd Ave and then the provision of playground space found here. Now, municipal reserve is in and of itself park, and I understand that we think of it that way, but when we think about things functionally as open space. So for example, the area down here within the existing Westgate subdivision is not in fact zoned as municipal reserve. I believe it's either a public utility lot or might be zoned institutional
Speak up a
recreation.
little bit, Cameron, please.
Sure. So down here, the existing playground within the Westgate subdivision, not a piece of a municipal reserve, but functionally acts as municipal reserve in terms of how people utilize it. And so our consideration is to say, well, if we've got about 61% of the land, approximately, serving that municipal reserve component, and then the rest is used as cash in lieu. But I think it's also important to consider that the plan calls for substantial improvements to this large open space, which contains the existing stormwater management facility. So if we consider that the developer is going to be developing a bike path, which is fundamentally or traditionally a municipal reserve use, and that's going to be developed off the site of the location that the developer owns, then we need to factor that into the overall land area that is generally considered for that type of use, at least from a high-level planning consideration. And that would also include landscaping improvements to that area. Right now, it's a stormwater management facility that's very much a functional-only management facility. We want to see that upgraded to something that's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, as it's a major entrance to an important neighborhood in the town. So that's new work that's going to be done as the subdivision is developed. The MR area that is shown, so not the entire municipal reserve dedication, that's about 0.78 hectares, but the area that's shown that features the playground is approximately 0.6 hectares. To provide a frame of reference to that, the existing park in the Westgate subdivision is about 0.31 hectares. So the park and playground that's being shown is provided by the developer is in fact approximately twice the overall land space dedication, to provide a frame of reference versus what's already there in the subdivision. The cash in lieu component of that is then used to pay or assist in the financing of the upgrades that occur within the land. So it's not just the dedication of the space, but it's also the construction of a quality playground. It's about the pathway and the other upgrades that provide a similar type of use in the broader area. And that's what some of that cash provides for the opportunity for. Lastly, the issue of the buffer strip between Westgate homes and proposed new homes. This hasn't been provided in the plan. It was an issue that was addressed at first reading. And it's still an issue that we're certainly still hearing some feedback on, particularly for folks that are backing onto this plan area. A call for some sort of a berm or a municipal reserve strip connecting 23rd Ave down to the golf course. From a planning perspective, the idea that 50-foot wide residential lots are incompatible to other 50-foot wide residential lots isn't really accurate from our perspective. So from our perspective, those lots backing onto additional lots is a perfectly reasonable use of land. It's something that's extremely common throughout neighborhoods that are developed throughout Western Canada. And realistically, we think from that perspective, we don't anticipate it's going to cause great harm to the existing landowners within the Westgate subdivision area, though they may disagree with me, and I perfectly understand that. From a broader consideration, though, the other problem we have with the provision of a buffer strip there is that it fundamentally leads nowhere. And by nowhere, I actually mean the golf course. So it does lead somewhere, right? For a legal use of that municipal reserve, it leads nowhere. You could walk down the municipal reserve, get to a fence, and as people always do, turn around and go back. But as we know, the reality of that situation is that that is going to encourage, functionally, in my opinion, certainly, some folks to use that as pedestrian access onto the golf course, which is not a place that it's designed for. It's not something that the golf course is interested in seeing. So from that perspective, it's sort of asking for trouble, so to speak. And so from that perspective as well, we think a buffer strip between the two neighborhoods is not an appropriate use of space. I'll leave it at that. The developer also has an opportunity to make a presentation, and I'm happy to answer council's questions now or later on in the process.
Okay, thank you. While it's fresh in everybody's mind, I'll open it up for questions for Cameron on any of his speaking points before we let the developer speak. anybody have any questions? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Van Rijn, and through to Cam, if I may. Brought up a couple of good points, particularly with regards to multi-use development. And I'm just thinking of the future with, particularly with the most recent announcement of McKeown's coming to town, or into the area, I should say. There will also be additional service industries that will be spin-off industries as part of that development upgrade. So what I'm hearing too is that while it is nice to have, you know, single family dwellings to some perspective, that the labor market is certainly a market that's going to be a need here in southern Alberta. And I would suspect that there should be an opportunity for not a comparison, but you know, a selection of dwellings that people can choose from in terms of what their affordability, lifestyle, and such is. So that'd be my first point. My second point is with regards to your to the MR, the green space. I'm just reading through some of the concerns that have been posted, and I think the number one concern that people in the communities are voicing and writing is the fact of a lack of a green space for all the reasons. And so I would like to stand behind the need for a 10% MR green space.
Thank you. Any other questions for Cameron? So Cameron, I have a couple. So if you could just talk a little bit more about the traffic impact assessment between 23rd Avenue and West Kirby going on Cottonwood Drive.
Absolutely. So the town is engaging in that traffic impact assessment exercise. That's not something that's done typically as part of an area structure plan process. It's often part of an outline process. This particular area structure plan is a little bit different because, like I say, this is an existing developed area. It's a smaller area, things like that. The traffic impact assessment is going to analyze projected traffic flows along that road. It's going to consider a long development timeline. One of the challenges with the work that we do around the table is that we have to think about things in a far longer frame of reference than what is typical, right? So we do have discussions about 20 years from now and 30 and so on. And so the traffic impact assessment is going to tell us what levels of development trigger requirements for upgrades, both within the existing space and also within adjacent spaces. So, for example, it will analyze the intersection of 23rd Avenue and 30th Street and consider the intersection of 30th Street and the highway, and it will look at the impact of this development and see, okay, does phase one trigger based on the numbers that are projected the requirement for certain types of upgrades? Does phase two? Does phase three? It uses very technical engineering consideration that is sort of standardized relatively across the province. And so it's a relatively technical exercise, but it provides us administratively with the indications of when those upgrades need to occur in order to ensure the safe and smooth traffic flow within those areas.
So my understanding then, Cottonwood Drive is considered a minor?
Cottonwood Drive, so Cottonwood would have been planned in 2005. So the traffic impact assessment, if any, that would have been completed as part of that process would have been substantially different than what is expected in 2023.
Okay, so but my question is, as a collector road, is it considered a minor or is it a major collector road now?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I would say as far as the section which you see there, the 13-meter top, the right-of-way width, it's got the look of a major. So major would be 13 meters of asphalt, hopefully 23 or 24 meters of right-of-way, a regional path on one side and a separate sidewalk on the other side. So it's built closely to a major collector. However, it may function as a minor collector. I'd say it's somewhere between minor and major in function. Again, the actual TIA would bet that for sure, but my initial thought on it would be major collector. We utilize the City of Lethbridge standards for engineering and for new designs. They have a minor collector, a major collector, a super collector, and an arterial. So typically in the TIAs, we would really look to, or sorry, in the ASP process, we'd really look to identify locals versus collectors and not necessarily narrow down the specific type of collector, which that would be done in the TIA further to Cam's point. So,
Okay, so follow-up question to that then. What would be the difference between Cottonwood Drive and 23rd Avenue with allowing driveways on 23rd Avenue?
okay.
I can address that point. So the fundamental difference, first of all, 23rd Ave is going to potentially deal with accessing to Cottonwood Drive potentially eventually. It is near the highway, and so it has the opportunity to be more, receive a more significant volume of traffic coming into Coaldale from the highway, which the traffic impact assessment will tell us if that's true or not. The other difference is that Cottonwood Drive is home to some of the largest lots in Coaldale, and the relative density of the Cottonwood subdivision is very low. What we have on 23rd Ave here is lots that are more appropriate for a duplex type of development. And so in Cottonwood, you would have one driveway, 2 cars of width, and then a substantial amount of space where there's potential for on-street parking before another driveway. You also have a 13-meter road top, so there's a little bit, even for those cars backing and coming and going and backing out, there's more road availability to do that in a safe manner. What we're talking about here is duplex type lots that are fronting onto very narrow lots and fronting onto a road that has the potential to have quite a bit of traffic. And so to have that volume of vehicles parking, backing onto the road is problematic, and it also really minimizes the amount of on-street parking that's available there. So typically where you see multifamily, well not typically, but often where you see multifamily development fronting onto major roads. So if you're familiar with the Southbrook development, for example, in Lethbridge near the new school that has townhouses fronting onto the road, those townhouses do not have front driveways. So like I say, administratively, of all the issues we're dealing with tonight, certainly not one that we have a particularly strong opinion on. We do think that we need to make some consideration later on in the process for providing means of ensuring that we maximize the availability of on-street parking and we minimize the amount or the potential for traffic backing onto those. But again, that's not really a component of the area structure plan process generally.
Okay, then I have one more question before I open it up to council. Back to the driveways then. So if someone wants to put a single car driveway or a double car driveway, if they were to do a double car, what is that going to do for space left over for landscaping? Go ahead, Dominic, go ahead and speak on it. You have to speak up for me.
Okay, why do you have the double garage? So you put because they have 2 blocks, you put the garage together, you still have a lot of room. But that picture there, I thought I sent that picture to you guys. So they show still have the driveway in front, you still have lots of distance between the places.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beekman.
Thank you, Mayor. Back to Cam, kind of going on the same point that the mayor was talking about with front driveways, and you're talking about you're trying to that having front driveways would take away from on-street parking. Wouldn't it be beneficial to avoid on-street parking on 23rd Ave, being a collector route, being a that's obviously going to turn into a priority 1 snow route? Wouldn't we want to keep as many vehicles off of 23rd Ave as possible?
Sorry. No, from my perspective, an 11-meter wide road top and a priority road is perfectly manageable from a snow clearing perspective. And with front driveways, there's still going to be cars parked on the street. So you're you're certainly not going to eliminate on-street parking. You've also got on-street parking on the opposite side that isn't fronting onto any homes, right? So it's alongside the pathway, and then the townhouse, which is what I refer to the multifamily to the north of the duplexes, would have on-site parking. So the accesses to those, for example, is limited to maybe 2 access points, and that's done intentionally because rather than having duplexes on both sides of the road, because we don't want to see driveways, especially there, crossing the bike path every 10 feet, right? So that limits the amount of traffic or spaces where that's coming in.
Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. Due to Cam. I think I would have to say that I agree with Councillor Chapman's assessment of the 10% MR. After reading all the comments that we've received up until now, people are really concerned with the green space, and I would have to say I agree, and I would want to see a 10% at municipal reserve.
Thank you. And speaking on that, can you explain around the storm pond, Cameron, what percentage is that going to increase if you go on top of your head with Jason, like the green space around that?
Sorry, the size of the storm ponds
Well,
increase?
the storm pond plus the perimeter, we're going to increase the green space around there as well.
I wouldn't have a calculation for the space. We are talking about a bike path around that, so it's going to provide for a relatively wide strip of usable space, not municipal reserve dedication. But again, there's lots of ways to provide for open space that aren't municipal reserve. And if the developer is contributing to that, through those at a significant cost to them, the flip side of that is that the reduced MR land provision provides for the ability to fund that. Right?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. Through to Cam. I got a question just to clarify this. Cottonwood Drive is 13 meters wide?
The main drag is 13 meters wide.
So why would we make 23rd Avenue 13? Because there's a good chance once it's developed, you can't go back and change that road. Most of that traffic from Cottonwood is going to go through there over to 30th to the stoplights. It's only going to get worse. And once that road's developed, it's pretty hard to change after.
I can answer that. Well, I can answer it. So from administration's perspective, the 13-meter road width is substantial. It's very expensive to build. It's sort of the Cadillac of road widths. It's not something that we see commonly applied throughout the town. So from our perspective, an 11-meter road width is quite substantial and certainly enough to accommodate what we're expecting there. But with respect to all of these things, we really just follow engineering design guidelines and use those technical specifications. So we tend to not make sort of ad hoc decisions about road construction. We tend to use sort of clear engineering principles.
Well, because then what I'm getting at is then if you're going to allow front driveways there, like you said on Cottonwood, because the lots are so wide, right, they're going to be condensed. At least you would leave a little bit extra room, like you say, for backing out. They wouldn't be into the traffic zone.
Okay, thank you. Caitlin, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add that the width of 23rd Avenue as it proceeds westward is simply an extension of the existing width of the existing portion of 23rd Avenue. If we were looking at doing the entire strip of 23rd Avenue from scratch off of Land O'Lakes Drive, that might be a slightly different discussion than simply extending what's already there. You start adding a different width for that short amount of distance, and then like, what's the purpose? Is there a turning lane? Is there separate lanes? And the transitional between one width to another on a single thoroughfare would take some additional thought on how to smoothly transition from one width to another on the same roadway.
Any more questions for Cameron? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to Cam. The idea of back alleys, I think you've got one there. It's just south of 23rd Avenue. Is that going to be an actual back alley? Is that, I know that that's been one of the other requests that's come forward is the idea, and they like the idea of back alleys. Is that going to be kind of a conclusive?
Can you call that map back up again?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. other one? Okay. So yeah, so we're showing an alley here to the south of these, what I'm going to refer to as duplex lots here, the R2L zoning, as well as these are the 40-foot width R1B zoning, which you find here in this cul-de-sac. This entire cul-de-sac fronts to the south. So none of these lots and none of these lots front onto 23rd Avenue, which is perhaps more important than traffic here because long-term potential commercial development up here is going to connect this way. And so certainly we want to make sure that these lots don't provide for that connection onto 23rd Ave. So we're happy with that. We've got an alley shown here. That would be a paved alley, to the newest standard. So that's the concept there. And also showing for an alley of a similar size here on those 46-foot width lots, which again sort of mirror these lots, except that they would also provide for an alley.
Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn, Pecuniary. I'm wondering about the bump outs. So with the size of the road, is that going to be problematic? Like with the bump outs on Main Street right now, we get a lot of complaints about it. So I'm just wondering, with the size of the road in this proposed subdivision, is it a necessity or is this just a suggestion?
Thank you for the question. It is a suggestion. And so what we're trying to balance here is recognizing that we can have a road that has the potential to flow a reasonable or significant amount of traffic, but we don't necessarily want that traffic to be speeding, right? So while we do have the potential for relatively, in the long term, potential for a decent amount of traffic along 23rd Avenue, we also have to recognize that we have existing Westgate residents and new Westgate residents, or whatever we want to call the subdivision here, accessing the park across the way, using this pedestrian connectivity to walk up towards McDonald's and all the new restaurants that are there. And so while the bump outs certainly make it slightly more inconvenient to drive, they also make it far safer for everyone, children included, to cross that street. So from our perspective, it's a worthy trade-off. And I think that for the most part, people get pretty used to them. So from my perspective, the safety it provides to pedestrians outweighs the negative modest reduction in speed that will be occurring.
Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn, Pecuniary. Wouldn't that be just zoned, the playground zone anyway, down to 30K?
Potentially, wouldn't probably not. Again, there's sort of technical requirements for that, and I wouldn't suggest I'm an expert in it, but probably not further to the west over here. The playground is located here specifically. So we're talking about one here and one here. The other thing that I would urge you to consider is that you can place signs that tell people to slow down as much as you like. The reality is that if a road, Cottonwood Drive is a pretty good example of it. If a road is designed in such a way that it's easy to drive fast on, some people will slow down and notice the signs, and other people will drive like it's the Indy 500. That's just human nature. And so we like to incorporate regulations to improve safety, which is to say lower speed limits, with actual design that actually makes people pay attention. And so that's the idea behind the bump out, is it's actually a physical, it's a physical design function that makes people, or forces them to pay more attention to pedestrians, to pay more attention to what's going on around them.
Councillor Reese, follow up.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. Yes, it's a follow-up we can. Is there a significant cost increase to do these bump outs?
There isn't one for the town. I've never built one myself, so I'd have to pass that along to the developer. But I don't imagine it would be too significant. We're talking about a few square meters of concrete fundamentally versus asphalt. So whatever the price difference is there.
Councillor Chapman.
I'll defer to Stayo Hastings first. And then next question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I didn't mean to leapfrog. The one other point I'd like to highlight for bump outs is if you do have the ability for cars to park on the street, there is whatever the width of the vehicle is, serves as a bit of a de facto blind spot for whoever is potentially waiting at a corner. And so when you do have an amenity on the other side of a roadway that's going to draw children from the subdivisions on the south side of 23rd Avenue, you do have to take into consideration the potential blind spots for short children trying to cross at a corner. You can, block off parking restrictions, but having a bump out does make them more visible to motorists and vice versa. So just to kind of round out part of the additional logic to requiring bump outs, especially in an area that is attracting children that are in the area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. And if I could ask a question through to Cam again. When you mentioned in Westgate that green space, there's not really green space in terms of that 10%. Would you be able to answer my question with regards to waterfront and that green space in there? Is that considered the same designation?
Thank you, Councillor. As far as waterfront goes, I'm not quite familiar with what the designation of these things are, and I would suggest that from a functional perspective, like once the neighborhood is built and people live there, it doesn't really matter whether land is municipal reserve or whether it's a utility lot. If it's open space, if it has a playground, that's the function it serves, right? So the children that play on the existing Westgate playground don't care that it's not zoned municipal reserve. So from our perspective, while we do want to consider the municipal reserve dedication as sort of the starting point of the consideration, we also want to consider sort of broader public open space use provided for the general area.
Fair enough. Thank you. Just as a follow-up to that, I know that the residents from whom I've heard from have tended to migrate to the west when it comes down to playground, play area, space. So just as a thought moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So now I'd like to open it up to the developer. If you can introduce yourself and then you can speak on it.
My name is Dominic Cholfi. I own the golf course. I subdivide the Dominic Land Development. I want to thank you, the mayor, the council, and the administration to work so hard at this project. But I want to thank you, Alana. Last week we worked so hard to send all this paper out. Now I don't know if you guys, maybe you guys didn't get this. Maybe I want to catch up. Now this project here, I don't want to build something that's so cheap before deal. I want to build some project where the people that come here, they like here, and they buy the stuff. I don't want to buy something, I don't want to build something after that the lot will stay there forever. Something, some other area. I want to build something like a Blair did on a Cutwell area. It is the best area in Alberta. That guy did an unbelievable job. I want to build high-end house, but at the same time, I want to build some small house so some family can afford. Not everybody can afford a big house. Nobody's gonna have a $500,000 to build. So that's why I want to mix a little bit, but not much. When we talk about 23rd Avenue, 20 meter road. 20 meter road is more big. You can get out so easy with the driveway and everything. So now, 3 points I make. All the people I talk over 1,000 people. So they don't have no garage on the front. They don't buy no lot. They don't buy house. So the garage on the front, the 3 things is good. You eliminate all the people parking the street. On the winter time, so you don't have no driveway, so you don't have no garage. So you have to block the car, the vehicle. You have to go across the sidewalk, people, you know how dangerous it is? So you go to the north side on the winter time, you go to 12th Street to gate, 12th Street to B, 12th Street north, you can see corn go up with the trees coming down because they don't have no driveway. When you have your driveway, it's safe. The people park inside the driveway and they can park the car in. That's one. The second thing, I have the garage in the front. I have the driveway in the front. It's safer for people. They don't have to get out. They go straight to the house. They don't have to park in the back. When it's dark, nobody see. People get hurt. It's not safe. But the most, it's the third point. The third point, the people, they love to have the garage in the front because they save money. It's cheap because they build the bonus room on top of the garage. So they build the bonus room on top of the garage. The people, they save about 45% because they don't have to have the roof on top of the garage. But this way they have 2 nice bedrooms for the kids. It make the house big. And plus the back lane, the people they don't want to look. It's for me, I should support the guy. I save money. It costs me money to put a back lane. I'm not gonna put the back lane. I want to pay with the back lane. So the city doesn't have to worry about it. So you don't look over the fence. But one good thing, so you get a good storm. You get lots of storm for rain and for days, you don't have to worry about it. You're not gonna flood no house because the back lane will carry the water to the storm. Now we talk about 23rd Avenue, 20-meter road. 20-meter road is more than enough. Like if you go to cut over the head, they call it 845. 845, it is busy road. It's easy. 20-meter road. You go to 6th Avenue, you go to the west side. You get cut every minute. You go to 16th Avenue on the Latin Bridge. It's got driveway all on the front. The driveway is the same thing for people. Now, when we talk about some green strip, this area here, they got more green strip than any other area. Because all of the lot, they visit the golf course. They have a green strip. They have the view for the rest of their life. Now, so we look at this area here. Look how much green strip. It's almost bigger than a piece with the both family. So when you look on the area on this side, you got just a little strip. You can even go in. And now this project here is the best project here in Coaldale. This one here, it will bring about $60 million, the $70 million job here at the Coaldale. So small contract work like the guy dig the basement, the guy put the basement, furnace, framing, all this one here. And one of these people, they come at the Coaldale, they come to work here. They're not going to go. They're not going to go for lunch to Latin Bridge. They support all the people for Coaldale. That this project here, it's a win-win for Coaldale. It's a win-win. It doesn't cost $1 of taxpayer money. But my people, when I talk over those people, they wanted the garage in the front. Because the garage in the front is safe. They don't want to park on the street.
Okay, thank you, Dominic. Are any questions for Dom? Okay, well, thank you. Dominic, if I could get you, maybe go sit on the other side of Cameron. And then I'm going to open it up for people in the gallery. We're going to start off with Blair Freak. If you want to come sit up here by Cam, please.
Thank you.
If you could just, for the public record, give us your full name, address, and if you're for or against the development.
My name is Blair Frake. I'm from Coaldale here.
What's your
By
address?
the way, the Mayor Van Rijn.
What's your address?
It's 3216 23rd Street in Coaldale.
Ask his box number.
We always use the box number, so anyway. I'm here to support the development. When I look at it, what I see is that the development meets or exceeds all of Coaldale's criteria. There's multiple size of lots, there's higher density of buildings, there's back lanes, which is very beneficial. The green strip issue, what I'm thinking when I'm hearing the 4% that might go back to improving the storm pond that there is now, that might be a good alternative for a really good scenario. Because if you follow the bike track just across the road, you know how many acres of MR, it might not be classified as MR, but all around the ponds, and there's all kinds of room there. So it might be in the town's best interest to say, yeah, well, let's take the 4% and take that money to put it towards the storm. And like you say, it's a short jaunt to cross the road. You know, I understand the concern of some of the people in the area, but it's not very far to go to where the Malloy Drain project is. But myself looking at it, you know, even when I'm thinking about the front driveways, excluding them, at the end of the day, you've got to sell the lots. It's easy to, well, it's not easy, but you know, to look at the plan is one thing, but then you got to take the whole risk, and hopefully you can sell the lots. And if you take the front driveways out, my concern would be tough. It'd be a tough sale, and I don't think anybody wants to see empty lots for any length of time. You want to see activity. You want to see growth. Dominic was saying you want to see people working and getting things done. But yeah, so I feel it's going to be a great asset to the town of Coaldale.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, next up is Ray Martin.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, members of council administration. I'm Ray Martin. I'm with Martin Geomatics. I'm the developer's engineer. We did the amendment on the area structure plan. On behalf of the developer, Martin Geomatics is applying for an amendment to the existing area structure plan, which was completed in 2003. Since 2003, approximately half the site has been developed. And with it up, open the second one.
This one. There we go.
That's the same as what you have.
It's legible though, so that's exciting.
Approximately half of the original area structure plan in 2003 has been developed, and without an amendment, it's quite different from the original way it's been developed. It's quite different from the one in 2003. So this area structure plan is being prepared to update the planning and technical information required to develop the area structure plan site. As you may be aware, the West Coaldale area structure plan amendment boundaries remain the same as the 2003 area structure plan, which refers to the land again west of 25th, west of the 25th Street, south of 25th Street, south of Highway 3, north of the golf course, and east of 30th Street. Major changes in the area structure plan due to the development since 2003 require that new guidelines and land uses be implemented to ensure that the remaining undeveloped land conforms with legislation and provides proper guidance for landowners and developers to follow for residential, commercial, and industrial growth and development. The area structural plan is a planning document used to regulate future subdivision and development in specified areas. Working with the town and input from the various public engagements, Martin Geomatics and the developer have amended the West Coaldale area structure plan as presented. Now, the land uses, the predominant, as Cam has kind of said, the predominant land use in the area will be a mixture of residential, low density, and multifamily, highway commercial, and public institutional use. Green space will be provided in conjunction with the expansion of the waterfront storm pond. The green space will be provided in the form of 1.6 acre park adjacent to the pond and a 30-foot landscape pathway along the north side of 23rd. The residential lots along the golf course and adjacent to the Westgate Landing will be larger lots similar to the Westgate Landing lots with a minimal width of 50 and a zoning of R1A. The two blocks north of that, it's in the yellow there, will be a 1A but slightly smaller with a 46-foot lots. And the blocks immediate north are going to be zoned R1B, designed as starter lots with a minimal width of 40. Now the lots fronting onto the south side of 23rd, as shown and discussed earlier, are planned to be duplex lots with an R2L zoning and minimal width of 25. Highway commercial will be planned along Highway 3. So the progressive density from low density on the south to the higher density along the 23rd meets the criteria of the municipal development plan, which encourages a mixture of housing types instead of the concentration of housing types. The roadway network in the development will mainly be local roadways with a collector roadway along 23rd from Land O'Lakes to the west, tying into the 30th Street. The 20 meter wide collector will enhance the traffic flow throughout the South Area Structure Plan, as well as connect the Coaldale communities with Lepage via proposed regional pathway located on the north side of the 23rd. The pathway will be 30 feet wide with a 10-foot wide pathway. There will also be extensive landscaping and irrigated grass along that pathway. The town is in partnership with the developer is undertaking the preparation of a new TIA, as Cam stipulated, which will be address roadways and intersections that are affected by existing and proposed developments within this area structural plan. Stormwater, the existing stormwater management facility was designed initially to handle the existing waterfront and Westgate Landing developments, with additional larger ponds required to handle the runoff from the area west of 30th. Since the town has developed the Birds of Prey wetlands facility, most of the stormwater drainage west of 30th Street now goes north, thereby reducing the size and volume required for the West Coaldale Area Structure Plan waterfront stormwater facility. Minor expansions to the existing waterfront stormwater management facility is proposed, which will enable the pond to accumulate all the runoff from a 1 in 100-year storm event at full build-out. Modification to the outfall control structure will enable the pond to have a reduced controlled release discharge and allow for a lower normal water level, thereby reducing flows leading to the Parkside stormwater facility in the east. Further talking with regards to the front driveways and lanes, at the open house we held in February, and in the letters the town have received, an overwhelming number of citizens have urged that front garages and driveways be available, as well as lanes throughout the subdivision. The main reason and benefits for front driveways and garages is to provide off-street parking. Off-street parking greatly reduces road congestion with cars tying up the roads while people are trying to parallel park. Vehicles can drive straight into their driveways with little to no road disruption of traffic. Front garage attached to the house is a feature that lot purchasers demand. With a garage in the rear, groceries, etc., have to be carried from the outside no matter how bad the weather. Back lanes provide a means to control lot grades and drainage while providing a feeling of visual privacy from the neighbors. As well, lanes provide access to backyards for the homeowners. The developer, who will be investing millions of dollars in the subdivision, stresses that front driveways on 23rd and back lanes throughout the subdivision are essentials for him to market the lots. In conclusion, on behalf of the developer and MGCL, I'd like to thank Mayor Van Rijn, Council, and Administration for the opportunity to present the amended area structure plan, and look forward to the approval of the application, which will allow the development to move forward. I would also like to pay particular thanks to the town's administration, who have provided guidance, into the area structure plan preparation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Since Ray's here on behalf of the developer, I'll allow any questions for him if anybody has them. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. So we keep talking about the front driveway and an attached garage. Why can't a floor plan of a house be flipped so it's an attached garage coming off from the back of the house? We talk about safety and people having to go outside. You can just flip the plan of a house and have your bonus room over top of your garage at the back of the house, on the house. I think we're trying to do a selling feature that's not really a selling feature or a hill to die on these front driveways. I think it's just we're spending a lot of time on one issue, and I wanted some clarity why we keep worrying about the front driveway and the garage. And you can attach a garage from the back.
Fair question. Do you have an answer for that, Ray?
Not that I don't know of a lot of designs that show an attached back garage in today's market, but I'm sure it comes down to, I guess it is an option, but.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Oh, 1 second, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe if I could just kind of draw you to this picture. So in this photo here, each duplex would have to have so much off-street parking or on-street, or allow for so much on-street parking. Can you share that?
Well, if you're looking at, as far as the driveways go, each of these lots are 25 feet wide. A typical, one of the larger lots are 50. So they may have a two, I might be getting off your question, but when you combine two, like a duplex, you put two driveways together, it's going to be basically the same amount of traffic or parking is what you're going to get from the 50-foot lot property. They're going to have two stalls as well. As far as parking on the street, if you have the driveway back to back for, the duplex, it should allow for some parking in between. And Cam said you do have parking along the narrow side of the street.
So the property line would be between the two garages.
And so then in this photo, for example, so there'd be room for 2 off-street and then 1 on-street. Is that correct? I mean, I'm just using this as an example of a multi-use facility.
But I would say that's probably a fair question. I haven't looked at it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ray. One more.
I've got one question. Is there any, on these small lots, is there any difference in the side set between properties as there is, say, from that R2L, the small lots, to say the R1s where they're 50-50 between them? Because that becomes an issue of kind of like in, I would say in Copperwood, where the houses are 2 feet apart, the roofs knocking on each other. Becomes a fire hazard, as we're seeing more and more. I'm just curious, is it all 2 feet or
No, all the same.
It's the same as a house now?
Yeah, I believe so.
What's that measurement, Dom?
It's the setback is only 4 feet. Like
4 feet.
Doesn't matter if it's a duplex, it's a house.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the intent for lot of
Okay, any other questions for Ray? Okay, thank you, Ray. I'll ask for Amy Musk to come up now, please.
One thing, once you build the garage on the back, you can go only 2 feet to property on the back. So it can be right on property line.
John or Dom, I'll get you to come and talk about that later because we can't hear for the people at home.
So, Mayor Van Rijn, if I could just speak to the question. 4 foot is the setback requirement in the R2L district, 5 foot is the setback requirement in the R1A district.
Okay, thank you. So Amy, the presenters, the developer and the staff, I kind of give them free rein on discussion. For yourself and everybody else that's going to be presenting either for or against, I want to hold you to that 5-minute part. So if you could introduce yourself, give me your address and speak if you're in favor or against the development, please.
Okay, good evening,
And
Mayor,
speak up too.
Council and Administration. Thanks so much for allowing me to speak to this proposal. I'm a resident of 103 Westgate Drive, so bordering the lots right behind there. That's me right on the corner. And I am expressing opposition to the current plan. We understand that eventually this land is going to be developed, but we would like to see it done right. So I'm here to express concern, first off, as the aspects of this development have been insufficient in the administrative procedure. The planning has gone about without the appropriate degree of procedural fairness to address the concerns of surrounding subdivisions, both in the current process and in the development actual land sale. I mean, the land sale is water under the bridge at this point. However, from day one, when it came to stockpiling of dirt directly behind our residences, dumping had begun without a permit. I had got in contact with the town and had filed a complaint. Then we had the developer come by our house and speak to my husband out on the driveway, telling us to
Amy,
come.
I'm just going to stop here. This is regarding the
structure
development
plan.
itself. I'm not talking
Okay.
about history or anything like that. So
Okay,
this
so
is about the development.
my concern is that the development, the proper procedure is not being followed. In October of 2021, stockpiling began again. It was to be dumped 100 meters from the fence line. It was then dumped the next day 50 feet from the fence line. So another call was placed, and we were told that the tamping down of the dirt piles or water would be placed on them to help with
Okay, Amy,
dusterification.
again, we're going to just talk about.
Okay, I'm
the
sorry,
development, not history.
Okay, so I guess the structure plan as it sits right now, when development begins, I understand that there's a need for different types of residences. It's with regard to the constant, I read the letters that came through for, with regards to that, I do see that there was a lot of pressure put on the back alleyways. The developer had specifically mentioned in their letter that people do not like backyards to be joining, which is exactly what's happening along the Westgate subdivision. In addition, the green space is huge. It's very important for our area. The amount of green space allotted, we feel, is insufficient for the size of the development. The plan lists Land O'Lakes as a visual green space. Visual does nothing. We need to actually be able to utilize the green space without paying a membership fee. There's a small park indicated right beside the storm pond, and it is across a very busy roadway. So hoping that, again, in the future traffic assessment, that there would be some safeguards in there for sure, because that park is placed specifically across a busy roadway. Greater defensible space like parks, walking paths, and green spaces encourage that sense of ownership and will lead to individuals taking better care of their land and their residents. This community has also expressed a lot of concern with the lack of green space. We feel that the town is really ahead of the game with the green initiative, composting 2.0 facility, and it would be great to see that green initiative carries through to the developments to set a high standard for anybody wanting to, have a new development in Coaldale. The structure plan also indicates a large amount of high density housing. This will increase the traffic along 23rd Avenue. One road in and out. It would be really nice to see another road in there, if possible. Already people drive recklessly down 23rd Avenue, and having that extend, it's just going to be a raceway. So also with that, the construction vehicles coming in and out would be a concern for safety as well. So just hoping that something can be put in place to safeguard that. The housing with that many multifamily residences, we would see likely a lot of rental properties, which isn't going to just be your 1 or 2 cars per house. There's going to be more parking, more people in the houses, more vehicles. In the plan, it's showing that just under 1,000 projected residents will be in this area, and that's a lot of increase of traffic and just density in general. So solutions for these concerns could possibly be adding additional green space. I mean, the buffer path would be lovely so that backyards weren't backing onto each other. The comment where, the road would lead to the golf course, well, the golf course is open on Land O'Lakes Drive. Anyone can access the golf course from numerous locations in and around, Land O'Lakes Boulevard or, Fairway Drive, any of those areas. It's not like it's a gated area. So another concern or another solution, I guess, would be that piece of land has a large amount of overland flooding that happens quite often. And so with additional green space, trees, things like that, that's things that are going to help where we can put drainage and things to, suck up the moisture.
I'll give you 1 more minute, okay?
Yep. Yeah. And as far as the multifamily dwellings, a large percentage could be allotted to the adult living, just to reduce the amount of vehicles and traffic that we do see.
Okay. Thank you very much. And if you want to email any of your comments, you can send them to us.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, next I'll call up Leonard Flash.
Leonard Hast, box 1360
That
Coaldale.
doesn't work.
I got 2 addresses, 1218 22nd A Avenue or 1709 20th Avenue.
And you for or against?
I'm for the proposal. Now, I had a presentation prepared, but Dominic Blair and Ray Martin have more or less indicated all the points that I had to raise. The major issue, as far as I was concerned, is the garages in the front. I made a big mistake years ago when I built my house. I built a garage at the back, which has never been used. And I still regret not having the garage in the front. I have a driveway, and looking down our street, most of the residences have driveways, so that generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of vehicles parked in the streets. So I think the garages in the front and driveways are a significant advantage to this development, and as well the back lanes. Now, difficulty with back lanes and garages is the space required to turn into a garage from the laneway, and it's very, very difficult in many instances without taking up a whole lot of the rear yard, whereas it's quite advantageous for the in the front to access the garage from the driveway. Basically, that is my submission. Like I said, some of the previous speakers have already addressed both points.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we'll have Leonard Hunter. I can get you to speak up our.
Yeah, you bet.
Live
Thanks,
cast
Mayor
and
and administrators and counselors for having me here. My name is Leonard Hunter, 1406 21st Avenue, Coaldale. A lot of my points have also been spoken about as well. I live in the town right now.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch. Are you for or against?
I am for supporting this. I live in Coaldale right now at the current address. I'd be also possible buyer of one of these lots if they would be, say, have driveways, have garages possibly in the front. The one thing that I would talk about is with all these decided to update while I was on there. So with the garages out, with the driveways up front there, a lot of things with parking on the streets. My brother just recently built in Black Wolf in Lethbridge. Now, mostly they have parking on the streets. His vehicle has been hit multiple times, hit and run. Doesn't know who did it, anything like that, because of parking on the streets. Also, too, he has a young kid. They have to take their kids out of the vehicle on a busy street. I don't know about you guys, but my mom told me not to play in the middle of the streets. So a lot of it has to do with safety for me. Being in a driveway is a lot safer. I would actually rather back onto a busy street than to have to try and get into my vehicle on a busy street. I don't know about you guys. I'd like to not be hit personally by a vehicle. If they hit my own vehicle because of my fault, that'd be fine. Also, too, with the new construction of McKeown's and the new school coming in, this would be beneficial for, of course, new people coming to Coaldale. This project would, if it was done quick enough, a lot of people would be able to purchase lots and build by the time that these things come in, so that no employees for these areas can live in Coaldale instead of coming from Lethbridge or whatever, or having to move to Lethbridge or surrounding areas. They would move to Coaldale instead. That's basically kind of all I have to say for right now.
Thank you, Leonard. If you could do me a favor, I'll get you to go watch the rest of this downstairs. We have it set up. And then if you could send, there's 4 people waiting to speak downstairs. If you could send one person up, please.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is Rick Proud and Rick here?
Mr. Mayor, fellow council members, I'm Rick Proud, and I have a house on,
speak up for that.
I have a house on 133 Fairway Drive, and I'm for this project. I think it's a win for Coaldale, and the people before me have covered the parking issues, so I won't get into that, but I think
1 second, please.
Sorry, there's 4 people on downstairs, but they're not here to speak.
So they're not here to speak? Okay, sir. My apologies. Sorry.
Garages or driveways, I think it gets cars off the street, and that you have a whole bunch of cars on the street, it kind of cheapens up the whole project. And that's what my concern is, but I'm for it. And I think it's a great thing for Coaldale. It brings taxes in, and with the McKeown coming in, I think it's a great thing for Coaldale. That's all I have to say.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ryan.
Council, Mayor Van Rijn. My name is Ryan Costigan. I live at 2506 Aspen Drive in Coaldale. Me and my family moved here about 2.5 years ago because of this neighborhood and the west neighborhood of Coaldale.
Get you to state if you're for or against.
I'm for the development itself. Being also a builder in the neighborhood, I'm the owner and operator of Independent Contracting, Rutberg Limited. I've met with some of my clients and I've talked with certain customers and so forth, and they've expressed their want for a front driveway. One of the other large aspects of that is with the duplex lots, we're able to add a little bit of extra square foot to that duplex above the garages, to maybe add one extra bedroom, another bedroom per child, maybe 2 bathrooms upstairs, maybe make a little bit of a higher level duplex in the neighborhood to bring a little bit more of a higher end homeowner into the neighborhood, allow people to stay in those duplex longer. You know, maybe they're buying that duplex and they're planning on staying there longer term, not moving out of the town of Coaldale, not moving away. Them and their family are able to grow a little bit more with the extra square footage. That also being said, we moved to Coaldale because Coaldale to me is a sense of community. And I know per se, you know, Saturday morning, I go out and I'm in my front yard. I open up my garage. My neighbors open up their garage. We're out front with the kids. All the kids are out front, and you're able to communicate with your neighbors a little bit more. You know, you have a chat, maybe have a beer in the afternoon with the neighbor next door, versus, you know, having a garage in the backyard. You don't really see your neighbors. You don't communicate with them as much unless you're really close to them. So otherwise, I think everybody else mostly touched all the rest of the points that I have concerns about.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Bill Martins.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. Feels strange sitting on this side of the table. I'm used to sitting on the other side.
I'm not cutting any slack either.
Anyways, I had no intention of coming tonight until I went to that coffee thing you had on Saturday, and I saw the map there. And first of all, I'm opposed, and I live at 2402 11th Street A. When we were looking at the map that was down there, I believe it's the ones off of 23rd. It showed the R1C as a 30-foot lot. Now, is that correct, or if I'm wrong, is that correct?
If I may, these lots here in the existing Westgate are R1C 34 foot.
Great. Are these good?
The red here is a 40 foot.
Okay, where's your 30 footers?
Not duplex.
Well,
the duplexes are here.
Those are 30 foot per duplex?
Per half.
Per half of
25 half.
Okay, then I misread that, and then I might change my opinion to 4. Because reading the map they had on the table, it looked like the R1C was a 30-foot lot.
Yeah.
And that was for half the duplex. Okay, I was under the assumption, it was over there to really tell me, so I was under the assumption that it was a single-family dwelling on a 30-foot lot, and I would have been vigorously opposed to that. But I do have some questions, and one is on 23rd Avenue.
We're not going to be answering questions.
No, but you can think of it, you get the answer later. 23rd Avenue, everything was given in metric, and I'm still from the old school. So I went and I measured 3 streets today. I measured 23rd Avenue in front of St. Joseph's School. It's 38 feet. 11th Street is 38 feet, and 13th Street is 38 feet. Now, I hope that this 23rd Avenue would be equivalent and not smaller. That really is, because, not answering that, it was not a 30 foot per single family dwelling, changes my opinion, so.
Sorry for the misunderstanding.
Yeah, no, that's quite all right.
Okay, thank you. Judy Hunter. Oh, you don't want to speak? I didn't realize I was on. Well, they highlighted me to speak, but you don't need to, that's fine.
Well, actually, I wouldn't mind saying they will come other things.
And again, Judy, if I could get to state your name and address and whether you go for or against.
Yeah, Judy Hunter, 110 Westgate Drive. So we're the third house in on the opposite side. And I am not opposed, but I am opposed to some of it. And what's new on this map is the piece below the church that we just saw today, like on the maps we've been given. I haven't seen that one. And this seems to be a big bone of contention with a lot of people, is these lots. At the open house, there was a lot of, what the market demanded, what the market demands. We asked what was going in, what the market demands. So what I would like to know is, are we going to be told when this is going to be developed, like what is going in there, if it's going to be apartment buildings, if it's going to be row houses, or is it just going to, they're just going to do it and not let anybody know about it?
I'll let Cameron Hill.
Cameron Hill. I asked you at the open house, sure, he said, that's all I was told.
So, there are, like in terms of the development process, like when the lot is created and when someone wants to build on it. When we, at this stage, when what we're talking about is zoning, the only thing that we can reasonably do is apply one of the 20 or so districts that we have. Each of those districts have permitted uses and they have discretionary uses. So for example, like on your property,
Mr. Mills,
R1A,
I'm just stopping there for a second. Ed Martin was just saying that we may have the wrong map up there.
The map in the area structure
Okay,
plan
so this
shows
is,
the church as staying as church.
that's
Yes.
what's been given. And
that's
here you
correct.
have an extra one on this map.
On where? No.
No.
This is the only
Yes,
difference.
yeah, that's the one that's, yeah, it was corrected. That was one of the early plans that.
Oh, okay, because I was wondering like how you guys.
We're not touching the
that
church.
one in on us. Okay,
Sorry about that.
no problem. Okay, sorry.
So for example, with the R1A districts, if someone buys a vacant R1A lot and they want to build a house on it in your district, it's what's known as a permitted use. So it's fundamentally like there's no consultation. It's just, yeah, okay, that's fine. That's a house. A discretionary use is something where someone wants to open, for example, a daycare in that house. That's something that's maybe yes, maybe no, and that's where you start to engage into the public. So when we look at this, we look at the R2 zoning, which is here and here. So that provides for 4-unit apartments, semi-detached or townhouses of up to 6 units, day homes, garden sheds, basic home occupations as strictly permitted. And then on the discretionary side, larger density apartments, townhouses of more than 6 units, assorted accessory buildings, childcare facilities, that sort of thing. So all of that would be a question of reviewing the design of any potential application and making sure that that design is suitable for the area.
So in other words, like we'll never know until it's been built.
No, so if it's discretionary, what happens is when we get an application, we send notifications out to generally people within 60 meters. We also would advertise it, and then we have the decision isn't made by the administrative staff at that level. It's made by the Municipal Planning Commission, which is 3 councillors and 2 members of the public. We make a presentation to them, say this is our thoughts on it. This is what it needs. This is how it aligns with our structure plan, so on and so forth. But it's ultimately up to them to decide whether or not it's a good fit.
Okay, and another thing I really don't like is this little rinky-dinky park for as many people as they're planning on stuffing into this. And you have a park that's like 1.5%. And they say, oh, well, we're going to do around the pond there. Well, what can you do around the pond beside mow it? And it is being mowed right now. Unless they put a big fence around it and
we've had a lot of discussion around the green space part of it. So
Yeah,
council
so
has
I
lots of
just want,
information on
I
that.
just want to know about that. And another thing, the people backing onto this, like Amy and her neighbors, I don't think that they want a great big huge path. Like all they want is a space with maybe some trees. And one thing that was, they had mentioned was their fence is 7 years old. Like, are they gonna replace the fence there before they put new housing in there? Or are they gonna put new houses against an old fence? And I think what they would like to see is a green strip with trees, not a walking path, just to you know, so that they're not backed onto each other, and that there is a new fence being built, rather than these people buying new houses and having an old fence. And besides that, I don't know what else we can do, what else we can say about it. I think I'm done.
Okay, well, thank you, Jim. Hey, Maurice.
Oh, no, he doesn't want to.
Oh, yeah. Then we have Greg Constant. Greg, if you want to take a seat, please. You came in late, so I'll get you to give us your full name, address, and whether you're for or against the development.
Yeah, Greg Constant. I live on 260 Fairway Drive. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for letting me speak for the new area plan for just north of the golf course. I'm the balance, I think, of the high-end, mid-range, low income homes, and the multi is just, I think it's perfect. 23 runs fluid, back lanes. That's was a game changer, I think, for selling feature for some lots. You know, you don't want to be backing on right onto your neighbor. You know, you go around. I remember West Side, some subdivisions that have the garage on the back. You'll see the corner houses sell, and then it'll take years to sell these lots. It's always been better if you go anywhere with the garages in front, with the nice driveways. It's safe for safety, and I think it brings most value to the lots, to the front garages. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Okay, Kevin.
Perfect. Just want to thank everybody for inviting me to this. My name is Kevin Greco. I'm GM of DMK Contracting. I live in Lethbridge and new to Southern Alberta. I'm for the bill altogether. I've been building homes for over 30 years, and I really like this concept. They have a really beautiful looking subdivision that's going to come out here. I'm definitely for the front driveways. Just to kind of answer your question earlier about building a house and being able to do the cab over in the back, you're really depleting the backyard. You want your children safe playing in the back rather than playing in the front yard. It would delete all of the green space in the backyard, so I wouldn't see that. I've built a lot of single family detached homes, and it just does become a parking nightmare. So you really would mitigate having a lot of traffic, having to weave through cars basically. Kids want to cross the street, they don't have to look past a whole bunch of parked vehicles. So I definitely am for the driveways, as well as the selling aspect. Like we're trying to build these homes and sell them with as much ease as possible. If we don't have that, they're not going to sell easily. And the last percent I think anybody wants to do is like put up a few spec houses and then just sit on that equity and pay your taxes on it. So coming from that point, I'll just keep it simple. I think it's a beautiful development that's going in. I like every factor of it. I do want to speak on the multifamilies. I do think that if there's a little bit more architectural control on what's going to be going in there, that you're keeping it high end. This is a very nice area. It backs onto a golf course. Keeping it to that standard, I think, is something that would sell very well and bring in all types of people. And yeah, I think that it's a very good job. And thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Can I just ask a question?
No, certainly.
No. Just
Oh.
on the architectural control.
No, we'll do that after.
You can find me later. I'll give you my card. Thank you.
Okay, Dino. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
You got it right.
My name is Dino Pasquati, and I represent 5Ps Custom Built Homes. I'd like to thank all of you for giving me the time to address you. I've been building homes for probably about the last 12 years, and I predominantly build in Lethbridge, but I'm also building a little bit out here in Coaldale. And from my standpoint as a builder, I really think that to get most bang for your buck is having garages on the front. I just think when you start, it does, and I agree with a lot of the things the guys said. There's a few things I disagree, but I think from a standpoint of having your garages on the front, it cleans up neighborhoods. I think it keeps things off the street. You get guys that bring trailers and they park trailers on the roads, or they park this on the road, or a vehicle that's broken down, where at least if it's out on their driveway, it cleans up a lot of area. And I think from that point, I think as a builder and as a seller, it makes sense to have them on the front. I also think by having them all on the front, you know, we look at some subdivisions in Lethbridge and they're poorly done. Partly because it's a hodgepodge. You've got this $600,000 home here, and then you've got a $200,000 home, and then you got one that's a duplex right beside it. And I think if you're trying to, and I'm not necessarily saying that this has to be a high income place, because then you're segregating people, and I don't think we want to do that. But I do think you want to make sure that it's attractive to people, regardless of how much money they have. Some people will find the money to get in there and want to live in a place like this. And so I think by saying that it's just for high-end people, I don't like that, because I think it should be a place where people would be excited to go live in. There's opportunities. As a homeowner myself, in Lethbridge, I back right next to somebody, and man, if their lights are on at night, you can see right into their house. And at least with a back lane, gives you a little bit of privacy. And so I think that's nice to have that too. I lived on the farm for like 10, 12 years. Then you come back into town and you're right butt up against people. It was a little hard to get used to that. So a little privacy, but anyways, I think it's a great idea. I like the ideas of, I like big lots. I just, you get a little more bang for your buck than having these 30-foot lots like we have in Lethbridge. And I think this gives you an opportunity to have a little more space, a little more creativity. And I think, yeah, like I said, I think, with I read about McKeown coming in, I think it's a great opportunity for you guys to have a nice subdivision. So that's all I have to say. Well, again, thank you very much, and have a great night. Thank you. You bet.
So I'm just going to give an opportunity to the developer if you have anything in
Just
closing.
one more thing I forgot to tell you before. All of this area here, that's a control of architect control, 100%. It's no one guy is going to come here and build a small house and one guy build a house. Everyone is going to make at least 1,600 square feet. They're going to have stone on the front. Everything is controlled by architect control. Nobody can come in there and build some cheap house. It's not allowed. So.
Okay, thank you, Dominic. Any follow-up questions for either Cameron or the developer?
You answered my question.
Okay, thank you. So I will now ask council if they have sufficient information to make a decision on the West Coaldale Area Structure Plan, Land Use Bylaw Amendment 865-P-02-23, and the West Coaldale Area Structure Plan Bylaw 856-P-07-22.
I just have one question for Dom. Because if you go to these duplexes, the way they're set up on these 28-foot lots.
Dom, if I get you to come here, but so the microphone can pick you up.
The only question I have is, and I'm pretty sure this will happen, is every household will have 2 to 3 cars. So you basically only have a 1-car garage and a 1-car parking. So if they have more, they will be on the street. But is there any reason why these lots weren't maybe 35 feet?
Okay, what do you guys see? More than you, so you have to understand. Some of them that they put a high-end duplex. Not too many people can afford to right now $500,000, $600,000.
Yeah.
Building. So some of the smaller family, they wanted some. They can go in with $300,000. Now, when do you have a garage in the front, so you can park in the front, but at the same time, they have a back lane in the back, so they can park in the back.
Okay, that's answered the question, okay?
Okay, thank you. So I'll ask one more time. Does council have sufficient information to make a decision on the West Coaldale Area Structure Plan Land Use Bylaw 865-P-02-23 and the West Coaldale Area Structure Plan 856-P-07-22? I will call the public hearing closed at 7 p.m. and we're going to take a 10-minute break.
This was something else that running. This is
my road where I
I'll call the meeting back to order at 7:09 p.m. I'm going to go to agenda item 7.1, the Civic Square rezoning from R1A to direct control, Land Use Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 863-P-02-23, second and third reading. And we have Cameron Mills presenting. Cameron, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor Van Rijn. So again, this was 863 P-0223, is that correct?
Yes.
So again, this has to do with the rezoning of the lands just to the south of us here to accommodate the outdoor phase of the Civic Square project. I think that's a project that's been widely circulated throughout the community, and we do believe direct control is the best zoning in order to accomplish that project as we've described it. The administration's recommendation is going to be the council provide second and third reading to that bylaw as written this evening.
Any questions, comments for our presenter? Seeing none, our options for that one is adopt bylaw 864-P-02-23, or we can table it, or we can defeat it. Could I get someone to sponsor one of those three options, please? Deputy Mayor Beekman.
I'll sponsor the council provides second reading of Civic Square rezoning bylaw 863-P-02-23.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Would anybody? I'll move for third. Okay. Councillor Chapman moves for third and final reading of Civic Square rezoning bylaw 863-P-02-23. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7.2, Civic Square rezoning commercial 1 to direct control, Land Use Bylaw Amendment 864-P-02-23. Second and third reading. Again, Cameron Mills is presenting.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. Very similar to the last one, this provides for the completion of the outdoor phase of Civic Square. Do support direct control as the best means of achieving that, and we would recommend council pass second and third reading of bylaw 864-P-02-23 in order to rezone those lands accordingly.
Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. I'll make a motion that council adopt bylaw 864-P-02-23 by providing second reading.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Anybody care to sponsor Councillor Pickering?
I'll sponsor the third.
So Councillor Pickering moves at the third and final reading of Civic Square rezoning bylaw 864-P-02-23. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 7.3, the West Area Structure Plan rezoning bylaw 865-P-02-23. Again, second and third reading, and we have Cameron Mills presenting. Go ahead, Cam.
Given that we've just gone through a fairly extensive public hearing, I won't speak to the matter at great length. It is administration's position that the area structure plan, as it's designed, does a good job of following the town's broader planning documents in terms of the municipal development plan and other key factors in terms of providing for those mixed-use neighborhoods that we think are appropriate and to allow for the subdivision development consistent with the neighboring West Coaldale area structure plan. And for that reason, the administration supports the application as it's presented.
So, Cameron, can you explain what the forward path would be if there was some changes that were going to be coming up requested? Like, how would we deal with those?
Can you give me an example of a change?
Driveway.
Driveways, excellent, thank you. Driveways have fundamentally nothing to do with the area structure plan process. Again, public hearings are great because we can hear from residents, but residents don't necessarily understand all the inner workings of the planning system and definitely understand that. So I thought we had really good discussion with respect to driveways. This is not, I clearly have an opinion on the matter. This is not something that I consider to be sort of mission critical relative to some of the points that were raised. So if, for example, you consider the point that was raised of not wanting any multifamily, I would sort of argue very strongly that that is not something we should be considering given all our other town plans. The issue of driveways on 23rd, from our perspective, the alternative is fundamentally to redesign the subdivision to not front onto 23rd, which has all sorts of cost implications for the developer that we don't think are reasonable. So there are a limited number of lots that do front onto 23rd in that R2L zoning. We generally prefer not to have front driveways on that type of road. That's why the block to the left fronts onto the cul-de-sac. That's why a number of the adjacent ones front onto streets in an east-west fashion. However, there is this block. My concerns have been noted. If council wants to provide sort of general direction of the path sort of that we should pursue with respect to driveways and garages, we'll incorporate that into the further stages of the planning decisions there.
So Cameron, can I get you to call up the overview again and just show us if driveways were going in, where exactly they would be going?
We're really only talking about this blue block here. This is an R1B, so this is 40-foot wide residential single-family lots that are fronting this direction. These units are fronting, I'm going to call this 28th Street, it's just a guess. Here, no concerns with respect to driveways there. These lots that back onto 23rd are going to access onto the south. This block here potentially has one access point here, likely a secondary one in this direction. These townhouses likely have two access points, but again, the parking is done in a parking lot type scenario if you're looking at a townhouse type perspective. So realistically, we're talking about a very small piece of the total puzzle. If you've got a bump out here, you've got a bump out here, you're talking about this particular length is the subject of all of that discussion.
So the lots by the cul-de-sac, if somebody wanted to access the rear for a fifth wheel trailer or something, no. Okay.
And that is particularly important because of this is, the 30th Street turn and the access to the highway. You're also potentially, right, if you get this commercial development, potentially if I'm bringing supplies to Home Hardware, it's potential that I'm coming in here with truck traffic. Again, that's not really going to extend beyond this area, but it is going to access up here. And to be clear, we're not forecasting the development of this road, we're just providing for the allowance for it. When the commercial development occurs, that's likely when this little town would get built.
Thank you. I'll open it up to council for any questions for our presenter. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move second reading of the infrastructure rezoning bylaw 865-P as 02-23.
Okay, before I call the question on that, we have a couple more comments. So Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor, and through to Cam as well. Some of the comments that came up included composting and garbage pickup and that. Would that be something that's supplemental to this now, like that? Those kinds of discussions would happen later on with regards to the development itself?
Excuse me. Generally speaking, that's not something the planning department engages in, so operations makes the decisions with respect to where garbage pickup takes place.
Maybe it just noted that the comments included the fact that the back alleys were a positive means for garbage pickup as an example to fret streets, something that the developers may want to consider in their future. If you want, that concludes my comments or questions.
Okay, Councillor or Deputy Mayor Beekman.
Thank you. A couple questions here. First off, just to keep beating the dead horse of the driveways. Just so I'm clear, the driveways, the front driveways, that kind of stuff is all going to come up in the MPC process, right? That has nothing to do with what we're doing right now.
Potentially, if there is an MPC process, right? So if the developments are permitted, like a permitted type use, it would simply be something that's done at the administrative level.
Okay.
So it's entirely possible that we could just handle it internally.
Okay.
Realistically, so if you consider the picture that was provided by the developer, one of the advantages of this, for example, is that this is what's you would call a zero lot line driveway. So rather than have the driveway in the middle of the lot, it's right up against the edge, and then it basically shares a border with the next driveway. So that still provides for a reasonable amount of on-street parking. So we would look for design considerations like that.
Okay. Second would be more of a comment than I guess to the rest of the council. My personal feeling, I have no problems with the higher density. It's going to be aesthetically and architecturally pleasing. I've lived in a higher density neighborhood very similar to this. I currently own a property in that neighborhood, and it's not the projects, it's not the ghetto, it's not a danger. However, having said that, a lot of the concerns from the citizens or residents of Westgate around the green space is something I have a hard. It's hard to negotiate on that simply because not our fault, but they were sold properties under a false pretense that there would be no development back there. That's not our fault. That's not the developer's fault. But if there's something that we can give them, they already have very minimal park structure. If we can give them a little bit more green space, if we can give a little bit more green space, to this development, we're going to take away from the load that may be utilizing park space in Westgate, park space in Cottonwood. And I feel that would be a consolation win, at least that we can get a win-win situation here.
So fair. I think part of the issue that I would take with respect to that is that I think there's a lack of appreciation of the scale of this. So did you say, sorry, Kayla, did you say, I always work in acres, so 0.63 hectares sounds like a low number, but basically this is about an acre and a half.
Okay.
Right? So Eastview Park is huge. It's 3.1. Right? So this is not a tiny park. This is twice as large as Westgate's park.
Okay.
This is 0.3 hectares. This is 0.6. So, and it's 0.6 only factoring in the light green. It doesn't incorporate the fact that you've also got open space in the teal area, which people are still going to run and play on. So from my perspective, and it would seem, for me, it would sort of seem disingenuous to say, well, we heard you and we're giving you an extra 2 meters or something like that. Like you almost kind of either have to go, from my perspective, the full 10% or consider this. And from my perspective, you've got plenty of park here, you've got a playground, and you're also asking the developer to make a financial contribution to the upgrade of an area that is at the one hand serves a utility purpose. Like part of his upgrade of that stormwater is to accommodate his stormwater, and that's fine. But we're also asking for aesthetic improvements and use improvements far beyond the stormwater capacity of that pond. So to suggest that a full 10% MR dedication plus the expectation that all that work gets done off-site by that developer is from my perspective, a little more challenging. When you're already providing twice the park space, that the folks, these folks may have been told by the realtors that nothing's ever going to be developed behind them. I frequently yell at realtors when they do things like that, but it does happen. But the reality is they bought in a community that has a relatively small park, and to expect that problem to be fixed by the next guy is problematic.
No, that's very fair. Thank you.
Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn. Following up on Bill's comment, can we write in there that the garbage pickup is in the rear there? Because there is an alley? Because everywhere else on 11th Street where I am, the garbage cans are out front. The wind blows, they blow down the street, at least that way on 23rd, which is going to be a main thoroughfare. Because if we don't put that in there, it'll be the residents who decide where the garbage gets picked up.
Kaylin's got a comment on that.
Thank you, Councillor Pickering. My only comment to that is an area structure plan is a highly formalized and restrictive document, and to place something that operational into a document that's that restrictive, it does limit the ability of the town's operations department to come back, assess the plan if and when approved, however approved. There may be good reasons why it should be rear or front or some of both. And by making the decision now when we haven't done an analysis, would make it problematic if we have to deviate at all from the front versus rear, and you'd end up having to, technically speaking, amend your area structure plan for a garbage pickup matter. My recommendation is that separate and apart from the ASP, if the desire is for new developments to see if we can make it rear as opposed to front, for council to simply make a resolution directing administration to look at that in the come back with a report. You can make a directive that way with a resolution, which is a lot cleaner from a flexibility perspective than trying to enshrine that into this element.
Okay. Yeah, so just to expand on that, if there were a policy that says in new neighborhoods, new neighborhoods where rear lanes are provided, that garbage pickup is to be required to be in that position, that would probably be more beneficial. The problem with putting it in the area structure plan is whoever is in the director of operations role 20 years from now is very unlikely to read this area structure plan or reference it in making those types of decisions. That's not something they do over the course of their workday, so it would sort of get lost in the weeds if it was put in there.
Okay. Any more questions for Cameron? Councilor Avery, could I get you to repeat your motion, please?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to move second reading of the rezoning bylaw for the area structure plan 65-P-2-23.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing Councilor Chapman?
Just a confirmation on the 6% then, is that what we're doing on the EMR? Is that the?
Yes, that's.
And the 4% would be the cash in lieu?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Sorry, if I may, 865 is the rezoning bylaw. 856 is the area structure plan bylaw.
865-P-02-23
is the rezoning bylaw. We should do 856.
Oh, sorry.
First.
Okay, my mistake.
That's probably my mistake. I wrote too many stuff.
It's your fault.
Probably. That's fair.
Okay, so then.
So sorry, bylaw 856. Yeah. Bylaw 856P0722 is the area structure.
Say it one more time.
Bylaw 856-P-07-22 would be the area structure.
Okay, I don't have that in the package.
That's 7.4.
7.4.
And we're on 7.3.
We put them in the wrong order. So.
Okay, my bad. Okay, so one more time, Councilor Avery.
So we will do 7.4 first, I'm assuming. So I'll make second reading of the area structure plan amendment 856-P-07-22.
Thank you for the clarification. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I gotta go back. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to.
Should I do third reading?
I'll move third reading of
Yes.
the same bylaw.
Okay, any further discussion?
I just have a quick question. Just given the amount of discussion, I want to make sure that there weren't any amendments built into the resolution. So there's been a lot of discussion about front versus rear driveway, and just clarifying that this is as presented in the document.
Good catch. What's your clarification on that, Councilor Avery?
It's as presented in the document.
Okay, so then we need to reassess that for clarification for everybody around the council table then. So your motion is to keep as is. Okay. So thank you, CEO Hastings, for catching that. So we passed second reading on as is. So now Councilor Avery is making a motion to pass third reading for the plan as is.
So just for further clarification, when we say as is, Mr. Mills, do you mind just?
Sorry, no, the area structure plan really doesn't contemplate driveways.
Okay.
So I will use, if council wants to provide a separate motion providing clarity on that issue, we'll apply that to the further stages of the planning process, but it wouldn't be part of the area structure plan.
Okay, so now I need further clarification. So if we pass a third reading tonight then, so at some point, when are these driveways gonna come up again?
in the development permit process. They'll come up in the development permit process if it's a if it is a use that is discretionary. It will go before MPC. If it's on my desk, it will simply be a decision that's made by me. There is no currently my guiding documents are simply engineering standards. So if there's some will to deviate from those to say require engineering standards regardless, require front driveways sort of regardless of the engineering standards, then a separate motion providing administration with that guidance is fine. As it stands right now, it's very likely that the TIA will provide, I think, for the ability to provide front driveways there, realistically. So I'm not particularly concerned about not being in a position to approve that. The traffic impact assessment will determine that. We could certainly consider it again at this subdivision phase and have a discussion. That will be a discussion with MPC though, rather than council.
So we have everybody in the room now, so I would like to have that discussion now.
Absolutely.
So then, in order for that discussion to occur, to move forward with the third reading now, so, and just for clarity for people watching at home and everybody in this room, so in order for the driveway to become part of the next motion, we would have to defeat the third reading.
So my opinion is no. I believe you could pass third reading and then you could make a separate motion directing administration to consider the provision for front driveways along 23rd Ave during the design process.
Okay, so for the fact that we're going to vote on third reading as is, we can deviate from that then?
I believe so.
Well, I don't believe in, I believe it would.
I don't believe that the discussion of the driveways has any place in the infrastructure.
Okay, Councilor, or Kaylin, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like I was just going to say, council can choose to consider third reading, and then separate and apart from that, given the amount of interest in this detail, my recommendation would be for council to pass a resolution that once the traffic impact assessment for this developable area is complete and reviewed by administration, that the results of the TIA be brought back to council. So that way it's a fully transparent decision, because I think the single most talked about detail was a driveway issue, which really is not a typical area structure plan detail. But given the amount of interest, both from presenters as well as council, I think separate and apart from third reading, there'll be a separate resolution directing administration to return back to council once the TIA is complete and analyzed, with the results along with a recommendation.
Then we can have a separate resolution at that time. Okay, thank you. So there's a motion on the floor by Councilor Avery for third reading. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to agenda item 9.1.
Sorry, seven. We have to go back to 7.
Oh, yeah, sorry. 7. Pardon me?
We need to make a resolution about the
Yes.
GI as well. TIA.
Well, yes, we can do that now. So you want to wordsmith a resolution for that for me then, Kayla?
I'll take that one.
We'll give you time to write that one up, and we'll go back to 7.3. And Cameron, do you have any further comments on that one?
I do not.
Okay. Does someone care to sponsor second reading on that one? Councilor Chapman, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Third reading, anybody care to sponsor that one? Councilor Pickering, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All the favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And then the last one, Kaylin, are you ready?
Yes. That was passed. Draft resolution, CPD, do this, the council direct administration to return to council with the TIA results of the West Coaldale area structure plan, along with a recommendation using this data on whether a driveways along 23rd Avenue be front versus rear.
So then this discussion will happen again at that time. Okay, thank you. Anybody care to sponsor that one? Councilor Reese, Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Opposed? Council Avery opposed. Motion is carried. Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9.1. We have the Coaldale and District Emergency Services 2022 year-end report. And presenting, we have our director, our fire chief, Kevin McKeown, and Clayton Rutberg, deputy fire chief, and Mark Anderson, manager of community policing. If you could send those gentlemen in, please. I will. Gentlemen.
Good evening.
Hi.
So, Kevin, you're going to be presenting?
Yes. Team approach.
Okay. You want to go first then?
Absolutely. Am I running this thing? Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we have the 2022 year-end report for the Coaldale District Emergency Services, which includes the fire, emergency management, and enforcement, which Mark will be speaking to tonight. So we're going to be going through the fire presentation here first. First slide I have up here for you is a breakdown of our call volume over the last 5 years. The calls in blue for 2022, that's medical calls. Orange is fire calls. So you can see last year we had quite a significant jump in overall call volume again, a total of 655 calls, which was 111 more than 2021. Over the 5 years from 2018 to 2022, that's a 67% increase in call volume across the board that our department has been managing, 20% increase over the last year. Breakdown, looking at the 5-year fire compared to EMS, so 52% greater number of fire calls over 5 years and 78% medical calls increase over those 5 years. Comparison of calls month to month throughout the year. The blue, dark blue lines on the graph there is 2022, lighter gray is the year prior. So we averaged 55 calls this year in 2022 compared to 45 calls a month last year. So monthly average increase of 22%. August was our busiest month this year with 66 calls for service, and that's 1 month alone. This chart showing the breakdown of calls between the town of Coaldale and Lethbridge County. 469 calls in the town of Coaldale, representing 71% of overall calls. 26% of our calls, 171 were in Lethbridge County, and 15 were others. So that could be mutual aid and other type calls that doesn't fall within the county or the town. So City of Lethbridge, Pitcher Butte, other areas like that. The large volume of our calls, again, is the medical calls that we do within the town of Coaldale. So in that number, put 348 calls medical, and that's why we see such a significant volume within the town of Coaldale itself. We don't quite do as many medical calls in the county. So there's the breakdown just between fire and medical, strictly in the town of Coaldale. So 72% of our calls were medical in nature, 28% were fire over 2022. And in Lethbridge County, majority of our calls, 63% were fire, 107 fire calls, and
37% or 64 medical calls, which is pretty average for what we're seeing now in Rutberg County. Calls by type, so the big blue piece of the pie there is our medical calls, representing 63% of overall calls that we do, which has gone up a little bit as compared to 2021, which in 2021, 55% of our calls were medical, and now we're sitting at 63%, so that's gone up a little bit. We had a very busy fire season in 2021, which we saw normalize a little bit in 2022 and kind of come back down to that the average 6% of our calls. Yellow is motor vehicle collisions, and mutual aid calls representing 3%, and then other 2% fire investigations and other calls that don't quite fit into the other columns there. Time on calls is actual time apparatus were there on scene. So a total of 490 hours throughout the year. 60% of those hours being within the town of Coaldale, 40% in Rutberg County. Firefighter hours incidents, so by firefighter, a total of 3,633 firefighter hours put in, and this is just calls, not including training or anything else that the members are doing. And 50% of those hours were on calls within the town, and the remaining in Rutberg County.
So with our fire prevention and public education, encompassing our inspections and some of the other programs that we have, we conducted 100 fire inspections within the town. And then within Lethbridge County, we did 66 inspections, 4 town fire investigations and 7 county investigations. Our home safety inspection program, we've seen 5 people ask us to provide them with home safety inspections last year, as well as we had 5 different smoke alarm replacements as well under our program, where we do have smoke detectors that are donated and available to hand out to people at different hours of the day. Burn permits, we had 24 burn permits that were handed out to 10 different users. And this is town burn permits only. This doesn't look into the county burn permits. And then we had a variety of different public education and definitely increasing our public education this year with the addition of our fire prevention officers. On the aspect of training, we had quite a bit of training last year. We were trying to catch up a lot of guys on certification. So everything from our regular hazmat and basic firefighter training, our 1001s, through to getting a lot of people through our wildland training as well, and pump operator and driver to be able to increase our pool of drivers for our fire apparatus. Last year, we also seen the addition of 2 blue card trainers within our department to be able to do our incident command training in-house instead of having to go external for that as well. So we got quite a few extra people included in that, right down to our senior firefighter level. And then lots of farm and grain focused rescue stuff as well. We had a few different events that were attended in that aspect. And lots of group training as well with Picture Butte with some of the technical rescue aspects.
Going back to medical calls here, just reporting on the total number of code red events that happened in 2022. I know this number continued to climb almost exponentially throughout the year as EMS provincially struggled to maintain with the call volume, where we saw lots of code reds, lots of events here in the town of Coaldale where no ambulances were available, and the fire department was being requested to respond first. So
Yeah, definitely a number that stands out as compared to the rest. There is a little bit of good news with that as we're starting to see those numbers come down. 2023, 9 so far this year. And keep in mind, that's only 2.5 months of data, but we have seen both EMS crews making that transition to 12-hour shifts, which prevents them from timing out, which resulted in a lot of our calls for service and increased code red numbers. So there is some positives that are happening with EMS here in Coaldale, and we believe that's contributed in part thanks to those 12-hour shifts with crews being around a little bit more often. So far, seen about a 50% decrease. If we kind of stick with where we're at for code reds, 50% decrease per month as compared to last year. So as the year goes on, we'll keep a close eye on this and report back any changes. Just a quick, brief kind of review of what's happening with EMS provincially, some of the strategies that AHS EMS is pursuing, as well as what have we done locally, as council and emergency services, some of our advocating efforts. So looking provincially, we know the plan was rolled out by the province on how to fix EMS, some strategies to improve EMS delivery to the province. So they're looking at increasing staffing, leveraging capabilities of integrated fire and EMS agencies, which is really good to hear finally back from the province that they're engaging. They realize the value that fire and EMS integrated services has. So it's nice to hear some of that language coming out of the province now. Addressing offload delays, so how quick ambulances can offload patients at the hospital and get back out onto the road. I know there's some work happening on that right now. And dispatch, addressing non-urgent medical calls. So they're doing a bit more of a triage step within dispatch itself for these non-emergent events, and having a look to see if they can be handled by other services that already exist. So can it go to 811? You can talk to HealthLink. Perhaps they can help. Can it go to PADIS or the Poison Control Center instead of tying up a dispatcher or sending an ambulance? Or can this be a non-urgent transfer that can go to IFT and you can figure something out the next day? So they're trying to divert how many calls that they're sending ambulances on for non-emergent cases. So some of that's been happening already, but haven't heard a whole lot about how that's working out quite yet. It's pretty new. Locally, of course, we got the 12-hour shifts with our ambulance crews, which is great. The ambulatory care center, which you've been advocating very strongly for, which has been great. Potential to change that again to an urgent care is something to consider still. The other two things, EMS contracted service provider and EMS moving to the fire hall, both of those initiatives are kind of in a holding pattern right now with AHS EMS and the province. Reassessing everything to do with EMS. So there's been no decisions on that, no updates on that. I have sent a letter to the new chief paramedic outlining the steps that the town and our department has taken to date, and more of a, just as an introduction. Haven't heard anything back, but that was only about a week and a half ago. We are part of the Alberta Health Services Medical First Responder Program. So the MFR agency run by Alberta Health Services EMS, they are looking at all call types that medical first response agencies go to. They're changing some of our response cards. So they kind of analyze the calls that, a fire department response is really not needed, and trying to cut down the number or the volume of MFR calls that fire departments are going on. So we are also doing our own review to see if there's any certain calls that there doesn't necessarily need to be a fire department response. That waiting a couple extra minutes for an ambulance to come is not going to be any detriment to that patient that's waiting. So before any of those changes come into place, that would be a time where we would come back and notify council of any change to the level of service for you to agree on.
So Kevin, back to that then, the type of call where you would not respond would be what type?
They're looking at some of the really low acuity calls, like an alpha sick person or something like that, and looking at the time delay. So right now we have a time delay factor of 10 minutes. So even if an ambulance is 11 minutes away, we're going to get sent, even if it's an alpha. You know, I've had a headache for 6 days kind of thing. So looking at some of those where do we really need to go? Maybe that's something we can cut down. That's not going to be, you know, detrimental to patient care kind of thing.
Thank you.
Evening on call, something that we did the pilot project on in 2022 quite successfully. Came up again as a recommendation in the master plan, sorry. And this is not strictly to deal with EMS calls by any means. This is to deal with the overall call volume and increasing workload on our department, but it is a strategy to help with that call volume. Further opportunities, there's been a pilot project in the province, I believe it was Spruce Grove, where their medical first responders with the fire department actually could assess the patient and cancel the ambulance that was en route if that paramedic or EMT on scene determined that the patient did not need to be transported. So that's something that could be looked at. There should be a report on those pilot programs later this month at the end of March. The other opportunity to consider in the future would be the critical patient transport by the fire department during prolonged response times. So again, there was a Alberta Health Services EMS pilot project which took part in Spruce Grove, where they had a kind of like a spare ambulance that the firefighters staffed, and if there was an ambulance, say coming from Edmonton or somewhere farther away, and that patient needed transport immediately, then they could call the doctor, get permission through online medical control, and transport the patient themselves. You may have seen that NBU Willow Creek was looking at a similar model. There was a media release about that a few weeks ago. I did ask HSEMS and the MFR team some questions around that program, but again, haven't heard anything back. But it's just something to keep in mind as a potential opportunity if we continue to see some EMS issues here in the town. All right, provide a report on some of our health and wellness and recruitment and retention programs. We have our mental health program that was implemented back in 2020. And just a couple of numbers there. In 2022, that cost was just over $9,000. In 2020, it was $7,400. In the middle year there, it was actually very low. 2021 was only $1,300 towards that program. But obviously, just showing that it's a much needed service, that our members are actually using it. They're taking their mental health seriously, and we have that resource there for them to use is incredible. Gym memberships, over the last year, we had 8 members use that incentive for $4,000. And firefighter annual medicals, this was a new initiative that we started late in 2022. And to date, 9 of our members have used this service, which is 25% of the department. And we had a couple more just recently finished as well. And that's our partnership with Campbell Clinic and Dr. Jeff Steed, who has come on and taken our firefighters on as patients and is our dedicated fire department physician. Firefighter property tax credits. There's the table for the past year. 26 firefighters received some variation of the credit. The largest percentage got the full 100%, the $1,000 tax credit for a total of $16,400. We're still looking at data from the past year to figure out the business tax credit. So I don't have that exact number, but we estimate that to be around $5,000, which would give us an estimate total of the year of $21,400. Last year was $22,600. So this has been a really great, I think, incentive overall. I continue to get calls and emails from people all over the province that want to implement a similar program in their municipality. So 70% of our members are getting some variation of the credit, some percentage, which is a pretty good inclusion rate, I think. And there is some eligibility criteria. Some people don't own a home. They still live with their parents or rent a house or whatever. So they're not actually eligible. So that's why not everyone is getting it.
Okay, so looking ahead to 2023, there's a few things that we're going to be going throughout this year. One of the first ones is our fire department master plan. So that was presented to you guys in December of 2022. And then here in March, we completed a bit of a strategic planning session with our staff at CDES to go through some of the recommendations, start to look at what might be involved with those and prioritize those. Our records management system, which is first due, we're continuing to implement that. There's a fairly significant amount of work with the implementation of that, but the system itself is going to be super beneficial going forward. Our Lethbridge County expanded area, we've been meeting with Lethbridge as well as the Lethbridge County as well as the city of Lethbridge to figure out more of define a mutual aid support plan in that area. To make sure that we're providing the best service possible. So we'll continue looking at that piece as well. Our regional emergency management program, with the recent exciting news of getting our grant for that, we'll continue looking at the implementation of that as well. And then with the hiring to fill the deputy fire chief position.
Just put a few slides together just as a brief review of the primary response area changes that happened with Lethbridge County just at the start of the year. So just as a quick reminder, these the two new areas that were absorbed by the town of Coaldale in Lethbridge County was Lethbridge Southeast and Lethbridge Northeast Rural. Total area expansion of 210 kilometers squared. So our total new area is just over 1,000 square kilometers that we're now responsible for of Lethbridge County.
So that's everything in the yellow?
Yeah, yellow and dark green is the light green on the west side of Lethbridge. I believe Colhurst is now responsible for that area. Yeah. So we pulled some of the calls that we've done so far within this area, and it pretty much lines up to where we had anticipated majority of our calls happening. So definitely along that Highway 3 corridor between 512 and Highway 3, you can see a lot of the stars line up kind of around there in the middle. Down along Highway 5, there's 4 green stars. So the green stars are motor vehicle collisions, and the red would be fire calls, blue is medical. So you can see primarily we're doing motor vehicle collisions on Highway 5 down by the airport and Highway 3. A couple fire calls here and there and a few medical sprinkled throughout there. These are pretty much the areas that we're going to be seeing the majority of our calls happening. We had a quick look at some of the response times for our apparatus to get out there. So 508 Township 73-B, so that's quite far down in the south along Highway 5, at about a 20-minute travel time, or should say response time. That's from the time we got the call to the time we got on scene. with command truck 20 minutes. 44th Street, the second one down, the vehicle fire, 800 block 44th Street. So that was for a fire essentially just east of 43rd Street, so kind of in that industrial area along Lethbridge. 11 minutes for a command truck to get there, 12 minutes for an engine to get there and start fire suppression. So that, I mean, that's fairly respectable response times to get to that area for sure. The airport obviously is a little bit longer. That's where we're seeing quite a few MVCs. So you're looking, 25 minutes sometimes to get there. MVC 43rd, Highway 3. Command was there 9 minutes. Rescue truck made it in 14. And EMS was there after us. MVC 508, Highway 5. Again, around that 23, 25 minute mark for all of our apparatus to get down there. When there has been an active fire threat to, threat to further property or any incident where we believe or sounds like a time sensitive nature, we do have the ability to call Lethbridge for their assistance so they can provide mutual aid response with us. We have called them a couple times to provide an engine, and that's been working great to have them provide assistance. And once they're not needed, then we can clear them up and they return to the city. Before we get into emergency management, want to see if there's any questions for fire or?
I'll open up to council. Any questions for the chief? Councilor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of the position that you're hiring for, how are we looking for that position? Posting it? Are we internal, external? What's the
So it posted internally for the last week, and it'll be going external here tomorrow.
Okay. And how do our firefighters get paid now? Is it still a stipend, or is it so much an hour, or is it through an association? How is that being done?
I can answer that question, Councilor Avery. Currently, it's still the same format that you would be familiar with the honorarium. We've been looking at changing the wage structure of how the firefighters get paid. And it actually came up in the master plan as well as a recommendation that we look at differing wage scales for firefighters based on experience and training and rank. So that is something we're looking at changing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there also something in there in regards to the association and what their function is within the department? So is it something that we should be looking at as council, how that structure is being done?
What I can say on that too, there was a change in how the payroll is being managed. So no longer is the association receiving quarterly checks. It's not their responsibility anymore to run accounting and paying the firefighters. We've actually moved all of that over to the town of Coaldale, and Ashley is managing all of the paychecks for the officer on call and the firefighter honorariums.
Any other questions, comments? Councilor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of comments following on Councilor Avery's question. Would you see once we get into a bit of a blend of paramedics, firefighters situation, would that change the fee structure or the reality check for how we compensate our members?
Through to Councilor Chapman, I don't see a major change with that. I think it's a good idea, and I think we're on the right path with having a look at our firefighter wages and what the town is compensating them for. There hasn't been an increase to their standard pay in about 4 years. So I think that is something we need to look at. And if I could just clarify what you were meaning with the blend of paramedics and firefighters.
So if we're eventually planning to have that paramedic firefighter component where a member would be able to do dual purpose services, then we would have to look at something different.
If the fire department was operating their own ambulance as part of a transport service, then there would be, I would expect a different pay scale with that, as AHS CMS would likely end up paying for that ambulance that's going to be put into service. But there's a couple other things to look at. If we would to get the ambulance back out of the fire hall, they would be within their own collective bargaining union, which would not have an effect on the paid on call volunteer firefighters.
Just a couple more quick ones here. Your first stat was really quite revealing. Your first frame was quite revealing that from 2021 to 2022, there was actually on the firefighting side, it really plateaued. In fact, we had 3 less in 2022 than in 2021. Do you see that possibly as a good thing? I think it was on the total firefighting county town. I thought that was quite revealing that it kind of plateaued there from those 2 years.
Yeah, I think actually overall going back into 2022, that was a positive sign. There was quite a significant amount of structure fires that we responded to in 2021. So it was, it's positive to see that number decreased back down more to what we see on average.
My final question is with regards to your medical count in the county. I'm just curious as to comparing it to the population of Coaldale. The county's population is higher, but the medical responses are a lot lower. Is that something that they're doing right out there that we're not?
I think part of that is a lot, different lifestyle out in the county, and once you reach a certain age on your farm, you can't technically, live there quite independently, right? So what do we see with a lot of people that are getting up there in age? They move into town, right? They move to where there's services, they move closer to the health facility, they move to Sunny South Lodge. So our population is very dense, right? Almost 9,000 people, whereas the county is huge with the population of 10,000, very, very spread out. So that would be my consideration for that point for sure.
Thank you, Chief.
Go ahead, Kayla.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 2 quick questions. First one, of the 9 code reds so far in 2023, how many of those code reds occurred while EMS was operating both buses on 12-hour shifts? That's question 1. And question 2 is, have you observed quicker response times correlating with the rollout of the 2 12-hour buses?
Thanks, Caitlin. For the first question there, I don't have that information offhand. It's something we can very easily go back and look up.
There's a second bus started mid-January.
Yeah, so it started mid-January. So I don't know.
About the first week in January. January 8th, roughly.
We'll have to look into that, and I'm not sure if any buses were off for other reasons. And yeah, just as a subjective kind of view on things, we have noticed that they are quite a bit quicker responding on calls now that they're assembled at the station. As soon as both of those units went to assemble 12-hour crews, they were on scene, quite a lot of the time before we even got there. So that's a positive.
Thank you. Any further questions for? Okay, seeing none, before we put it over to Mark, I just wanted to thank Kevin for his 16 years with Coaldale, 6 years working full-time, and congratulate Kevin on his new appointment with the City of Lethbridge. And also I wanted to congratulate Clayton with his promotion to Director of Protective Services. So thank you for all your work. you want to give us a 1 minute spiel about what you want to be doing in Lethbridge?
Yeah, just quickly, thank you, Mayor Van Rijn and Council. Really, it's truly been an honor to serve as the Director of Protective Services Fire Chief for the town of Coaldale. I started very early on my career in 2007 as a volunteer firefighter and paramedic with the town of Coaldale, and here we are 16 years later. And 6 years ago, having the opportunity to serve as chief was really, an honor in my career, and thank all of you for your support. And we have an amazing team from administration, council, and everyone at the fire department. It's truly been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Clayton, you got anything to say?
I've enjoyed working with Chief over the last 5 years, and I look forward to carrying the department forward. As sad as it is to see Chief go and go on to the city, I'm excited for him. I'm excited for where we're going to go with the department. There's lots of good things going on right now, and it'll be nice to continue on with that.
And you stepped into the position April 17th?
Yeah.
Great.
Department's in good hands.
We'll see you both on Friday at the going away service. Okay, Mark, you're up to bat.
Actually, I got one slide before I turn it over to Mark. With our emergency management from last year, we had a exercise that we participated in, which was a functional exercise, which was actually Lethbridge County's exercise, which is a grant funded through them. So all the different municipalities within Lethbridge County played some type of role in it. So we activated our reception center for that here in September. We had quite a bit of ICS training last year with a couple 100s and 200s going on, as well as continuing to keep up with our legislative requirements and have our staff taking the basic emergency management course. We did do 2 tabletops ourselves last year. So it's usually off years. If we do tabletops, Lethbridge County is usually doing a functional. So this year we'll be doing a functional exercise, and Lethbridge County will be doing tabletops. And then we also had 2 new staff members go into well, not new staff members, but 2 new members into the block training with the South Zone All Hazards Incident Management team and complete all that as well. We did our annual municipal emergency plan review with Alberta Emergency Management Agency here in January and completed that. And then we've been doing lots of work with all the other communities, obviously, on the regional partnership. It was quite exciting to get that grant as well.
Thank you.
I guess it's my turn now. So Coaldale and District Municipal Enforcement again had a busy year in 2022. Our fellows been out there, they put in, I think, an exceptional year in moving the department forward and building it. And in 2022, we had 145 calls from the community, calls for service. So that's people calling in either through phone, email, or in person, asking for us to respond to an event in the town. We had 245 officer-initiated calls for service. So that was things that the officers did proactively, initiated on their own. Our top calls for service again last year, which was not a surprise for us, but it took us a bit, was animal control, having 57 calls. And for us, animal control at the current time is strictly canines, dogs. So it did take a fair amount of time. I won't go over our challenges. We've discussed those before about animal management. Community standards, bylaw infractions come in at a close second at 50 calls on the year. And while there are fewer calls with the community standards, quite often they can be quite time consuming, involving a number of different actions involved in any one single call. So they can be quite time consuming. Traffic special attentions, we spent a lot of time last year on those, handling 47 different special attentions where we were focusing on concerns within the community for specific traffic problems, whether that be speeding, stop sign violations, quite a bit of time with concerns raised from the high school about youth driving in the area. And business license inquiries rounded out our top 4 calls for the year. Those would encompass not just, that number encompasses strictly on calls that our fellows stopped and checked businesses operating within the community. We also working with our tax licensing department there, did a complete check of every business that hadn't renewed their license in Coaldale in 2022 to find out whether or not those businesses were actually still operating here or whether they were no longer in business or had moved, so that we could clean up our tax rules for 2023. Our notable calls in 2022 was our one dog attack event that occurred near Jenny Emery School, which involved 2 boxer type dogs. That matter was resolved in cooperation with pet owners. It was unfortunate that it occurred, but it won't happen again. Community standards, again, under community standards, most of our community standards infractions involve a couple of developers who own a significant number of undeveloped lots within the town. We took a 2-pronged approach to that, trying to work with both the property owners and with a private contractor to make sure that those lots were cleaned up. And it resulted in about 50% of the lots being looked after in a timely fashion by the owners, and the other 50% being addressed by our town contractor, and the cost of that contractor being passed back to the property owners for recovery. In 2022, again, traffic safety was a huge initiative for us in 2022, not only in relation to our CPO1s being involved in the community, but also in updating all of our enforcement systems to the new provincial standards, which is still continuing today to be implemented. Our CPOs were involved in 28 different events related to traffic safety, including special attentions at our intersections around our schools and crosswalks. They also did some automotive safety training with the high school, and also participated in joint events with emergency services and RCMP, putting on a mock scenario with Kate Andrews High School with relation to traffic safety. Our organizational structure did not change much during 2022. We did add one on-call volunteer bylaws officer to help us with special events so that we could increase our staffing a little bit. This person is not paid, they volunteer with the town. They are sworn in, or he is sworn in as a bylaws officer so that he can take initiatives if he had to tow a car from a parade or something like that. He is covered that way. Throughout the year, our officers all participated in training at one level or another. For myself, it was obtaining a certificate in unsightly property investigations, and also the ICS 200. And for our CPO1s, they both attended training as dangerous goods inspectors in the previous year in 2022, obtaining their certificates. And put those certificates into good use immediately by starting to conduct dangerous goods inspections as units are passing through the town, and did so in partnership with other organizations, other enforcement agencies as well. A large component of our unit is our automated traffic enforcement program, and again, a lot of changes this year with the province. In December 2021, new automated enforcement guidelines were introduced by the province, which required us to come on board and be compliant in 2022, which redirected how we report what we do with automated enforcement. Consequently, you'll see the new abbreviated version of what I have to submit to the province here as a display. The highlights for us, though, were that in 2022, we saw a 15% increase in the amount of traffic that we actually monitored using automated enforcement. However, there was a decrease of over 6% in actual number of violations, and a decrease of 5% in the actual number of violation tickets issued. So So I saw that as a really positive event. Our traffic volumes have gone up exponentially, partly due to the fact of opening up after COVID. Our traffic volumes are even an increase over what they were in previous years, but our actual violation rate as a component of that volume is down. So I think our entire traffic safety plan is having an effect on traffic within the community. And during 2022, again, we conducted a complete reassessment of every flow radar site within the town. We ended up eliminating 6 of them as no longer, number one, not being compliant with the provincial guidelines because they no longer had an issue with speeding, or they had been addressed through the town using other methods, whether they be speed bumps on 18th Avenue, traffic signage, things like that. Requirement by the province now is to know exactly where the funds that we generate through automated enforcement are used within the town. So working together with our finance department, we went through to fairly attribute things that the town has done to increase traffic safety other than just deploy photo radar or issue tickets. And during 2022, we spent a significant amount of money on improvements within the town. We upgraded a number of pedestrian crosswalks. We added a sidewalk down by our mountain bike park at the east end of town. We did a number of crosswalk widenings to make them more accessible for pedestrians and challenged to cross streets in our town. We repainted all of our sidewalk lines, all of our speed signs on the roadway, and we conducted an accessibility safety audit. So the town last year spent approximately $193,000 just on traffic safety within the town, which is outstanding. In addition, the town also supplied community grants of $35,000, which is money that comes again from automated traffic enforcement. And our operating costs last year for the unit was $396,523. So that's where the money that came in went. The little chart on the upper right hand just shows you year over year, since 2018, what our total number of vehicles monitored, total violations, and Alberta and out of province violations that were issued. Again, the financial component of it, in 2022, 6,118 automated enforcement tickets issued. The average cost is there. You can see what the gross revenue was. And for those who are interested in the breakdown, the victim fine surcharge, which is a government surcharge added onto every ticket, amounts to about 20% of the face value of any ticket issued. The province of Alberta component of any violation ticket issued is 40%. That's the amount that would have been taken away from there. And anticipated uncollectibles run about 20%. So if we write 100 tickets, we can anticipate about 20% we'll never see anything on, either they're out of province that won't pay it, or there could be just people that just won't pay it. If they don't renew their vehicle, we don't have an opportunity to collect that. And that's a historical average. Our 2022 anticipated revenue to the town was $475,000 after all everybody else has taken theirs out. So it's a little less than 50%. The 2022 revenues that the town received in, you'll see though that it comes out at $529,000. The reason for that is when the town receives its money from the province after it's been collected, it doesn't necessarily relate directly to that year. So although we were anticipating $475,000 in 2022, some of the fine revenue coming back would be from tickets issued from the previous year. Some might be for the existing year, and some could be historical. So the numbers are never going to be exactly the same between what's issued and what we will see coming back in. I have to look at the smaller screen with my reading glasses. So our community engagement, we took it to heart what was said at our community engagements before we launched our new revised municipal enforcement program, and what the community wanted. And the community asked that they see us out in the community more often and more involved with the community, not just behind the car steering wheels or in the office. So in 2022, we've tried to engage as often as we can in a number of events within the community, whether it be events with the law enforcement torch run and doing a number of events where we've gone out and participated with community events in there. Our impaired driving presentations that have been made at Kate Anders High School. We did an entire month in March where not just automated enforcement, but also our CPO1s were directly engaged in the community and stopping people and giving them updates and safety programming in relation to our playground zones and schools. We also have been involved quite heavily in the community in working towards a new animal welfare group. And we were involved in October in our little event called Spooky Tales, where we invited members of the community to come in and really give us some feedback on what they'd like to see happen. And we're implementing those things now as we move into 2023. Some of the other things for our community in 2022, CDME was asked or put forward a proposal to Lethbridge College to develop an intern program where we could engage students from the college within the town of Coaldale, gaining experience in municipal enforcement, providing two benefits: one for the student to get some practical experience that they could take into the job market, and also providing us increased capacity during our busiest times of the year in a cost-effective manner. And to do that, we've partnered with Lethbridge College and also 5th on 5th Youth Services out of Lethbridge to assist in funding for that program. We just last week gave out letters, offers of employment for those summer intern positions for 2 people. And we're very excited that they'll be starting here very shortly during their training. Also in 2022, I was asked if I would chair the Lethbridge College Criminal Justice Curriculum Advisory Committee, which is now something we're doing and participating, and it's really giving the town of Coaldale an opportunity to let the college know what kind of skills and attributes we're looking for in people to come and work in our environment. It's also giving us an opportunity to look at how we can improve our own service delivery here within the town. December is always a busy month for us with the community Canadian check stop that our CPOs do in conjunction with RCP and other agencies, as well as BAD. And again, this year we did not just the candy cane check stop, but we also had a toy toss on the night of Lights Parade, and we also engaged in the stuffed sleigh event with the Red Apple, and all of which was really exciting for us this year to be involved in that. Our partnerships, we really, the town has within their own strategic plan wants to build partnerships with other agencies, with other municipalities to try and have best practice and best service delivery. We have established a really good relationship with the RCMP, where we meet regularly, discussing common issues and participate in joint planning. We plan the traffic initiatives. The Lethbridge Air Show was one, Summerfest, Night of Lights, candy cane check stops, etc. All things that we do jointly with the RCMP, where we try and support each other, and we do joint planning sessions on it. Tabor Police Service, another partnering agency for us, continues to supply our officer safety service, call monitoring, and officer safety monitoring. A new initiative for us in 2022 was the Tsuut'ina Nation Police Service. Tsuut'ina Nation reached out to us. They'd heard about the town of Coaldale automated enforcement program. They haven't had a real need within the nation for a traffic safety program. Their collision rate increased 300% in the last 2 years, just with the addition of the ring road to their jurisdiction. They heard about us actually from Tabor Police Service, and they reached out to us. And so we've provided them with some consulting services on a partnership basis to help them get up and running. And we've been using the Coaldale model as a basis for their programming. They will be launching their own programming now in 2023, and we're very excited to have been involved with them on that. Ridge Regional Public Safety Services, again, another partner, continues to provide us with our temporary animal control sheltering, and also in other community events. They've been invited out to our candy cane check stops and whatnot. Again, Lethbridge College, I've already mentioned it, I won't do that again, but within the town itself, our interdepartmental partnerships are a huge asset for us. Working with operations, planning and licensing, economic development, and they all play a huge part in helping us provide better service. And I can't speak enough about how the different departments are open and engaging and making our job so much easier. Lastly, for 2023, again, our strategic goals for the coming year, again, is to increase public safety, using our partnership with the RCMP, working with planning section, and relaunching the traffic calming initiatives that we were well into last year, and moving forward with our traffic analysis program that we had been running in 2021 and 2022. And we want to expand some of the services available through our SRO program, expanding the safety aspects of those activities we're doing in the schools. Within the community itself, again, increased involvement with the Animal Wellness and Humane Society development, which is well underway now. We have committed to being involved in some more law enforcement torch run events, and this year we're hoping to have a little bit more involvement with my own pet thing, which is the Ride for Dead, and having the town involved in that. And again, with community growth, we're looking at different ways to help streamline the processes within our department and with the other departments, as far as developing areas for regulatory improvements, for best practice, continuing with our bylaws reviews, and coming up with an improved care facility for our at-large dogs within the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. Any questions for Mark?
Yeah.
Councilor Chaplin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mark, for your presentation and your review of the last 12 months. Two questions. One with regard to a spring blitz check stop. Do you know if that's going to happen again this spring? Like, I think the provincial law enforcement, I think they do commercial vehicle checks and all that. Do you know if that's going to be taking place this spring?
I have not received any notification from the province about one. We will be doing another enforcement blitz once we have our interns trained and once we've been able to identify a replacement for our CPO1 who recently moved on to another department.
My final question is, you mentioned in your presentation about SROs. First, I've heard about it in a long, long time. Could you elaborate a little bit on the school resource officer?
Okay, so Devin Nielsen, one of our CPO1s, assumed the role or took on the responsibility of being a school resource officer for the town. This was done in consultation and partnership with the RCMP, who were unable to provide somebody to do that at the time. So Devin took it on and has since maintained that role. So he coordinates interaction with the school, with both emergency services, with the RCMP, with MAD, with whoever is going to come in. Plus he provides a lecture series for the high schools and for the elementary schools for different events.
Thank you.
Question regarding staffing levels. So you have those two interns coming, and as far as replacing Scott that left, what are the plans for that?
Our plan now is to, during the month of April, we'll be meeting with the new chief to determine what attributes we're going to be looking for in our next applicant so that we can build on and round the unit that we have now.
Okay. And then my other question was, you mentioned from the photo radar signalized crosswalk. Do we do one of those every year, or is it as needed?
Sorry, I misunderstand you.
So the signalized crosswalk crossings, the flashing lights?
Yes.
So are we doing those as needed, or do we add more?
Yeah, I do not know the answer to that question. I would have to reach out to operations. They are the ones who would do the installs, and it would be the traffic calming committee and our engineering department who would identify those locations.
Okay. Caitlin, you got any comments on that?
I'll have to get back to you, Mr. Mayor, on how that works. I know we do use a subset of the safety infrastructure fund from photo radar to fund upgrades like that, but whether they're scheduled or whether it's on as needed, I'll have to get back to you on that detail.
Okay, thank you. And my last question before I open up to council is the photo radar on Highway 3, like how many out of town? There used to be a percentage, or something like 70% of the tickets issued are from people out of town.
It's consistent this year as well.
Okay. Thank you. I'll open it up. Any other questions for Mark? Okay, seeing none, can I get someone to sponsor a motion that council receive the Coaldale and District Emergency Services 2022 year-end report as information? Councilor Saylor, any further discussion? See that one question.
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed that a couple people went away and took DG inspector course, or dangerous goods inspector. Do we have a level of service that we provide, or is this just something that we decide? Because usually it gets up to council on the level of service we're going to provide. So this just was a little bit of a shock to see that we've sent people up to Lac-La-Biche to take this training. So I don't, like, how does it work with municipal enforcement?
So municipal enforcement, part of when we started out was that they were going to be doing traffic enforcement and truck enforcement in the town because of the number of trucking agencies we have here and the amount of truck traffic passing through town. As part of their ongoing training, dangerous goods was an idea for training, or a training initiative for them. From when we started, this was the first opportunity we had to get them to the course.
Councilor Johnson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you enlighten us a little bit in terms of your work with regards to Jake breaks, what the outcomes were?
Jake breaks, my favorite. Yes, so Jake breaks, as you may know, there's been lots of conversations around Jake breaks. We did a 2-week blitz with 3 members working 845 on Highway 3, enforcing Jake breaks. And our hours of operation for that went from 5 a.m. in the morning until 10 p.m. at night. And over the 2-week period, we did not get one Jake break offense. Excuse me, that's not correct. We had one Jake break offense on Highway 3. Unfortunately, there was 2 trucks. We didn't know which one used the Jake break. During that 2-week period, we did issue 100 speeding tickets, not one to a semi-truck. And I can tell you from not just anecdotal, but from my own bedroom window, the week after that, I had about 10 Jake breaks go off about 5 o'clock in the morning when we weren't out there. So yes, it continues. The one thing that I can report back on now is that through our contacts with a number of other interdepartmental agencies, our concern, as well as the concern of other municipalities about Jake breaks and the wording of signages coming into town, has been advanced to the minister. And there have been some discussions. They asked for the history on it within the town of Coaldale, which I have supplied back through one of, not the minister directly, to one of the officials in that agency on the history and the different wordings and what we need as a municipality in order to make this something that's truly enforceable. So it's back at the minister's level now, and I'm waiting to hear back. That all took place in the latter part of February, so I don't have a response yet.
When you brought up signage, that tweaked my memory. Any progress on the signs south of Coaldale going farther out?
So that's all part of what I've been talking with the ministry about. The way it sits now, Alberta Transportation puts the signs at the town limits. And when we did our annexation, although we extended quite a bit farther south, we didn't include the roadway in the annexation. So actually where the signs are placed for northbound is right at the town limits, which is within 400 meters of residences as it is now. There are other options that I would have to talk to other people about on how you can change that. So at the moment, I've left that at the minister's level to get back to us with further information when they can.
McKeown, go ahead.
Thank you. I can offer that Jonathan Wensveen, our manager of government relations, has been in contact with officials in Alberta Transportation, asking them and lobbying for them to move the signage. As Mark mentioned, in order to move the signage, we're able to lower the speed limit, and in turn, people ideally will start slowing down at an earlier location prior to there being high density of housing. So Jonathan is working on that file, and I'll have to check in with him to see where that's at, but I think an update like the next meeting would be appropriate.
And that problem is only on the south side, or is that on the north as well?
We don't get many requests on the north side for jailbreak enforcement.
Councillor Chapman.
And to you, Mayor, maybe it's a question of where our signs that say, town of Coaldale limits are. So if we've already, with annexation, we've extended the distance to the town. So if the town limits are set, 400 yards inside, then or a couple of blocks, and we need to move that to where the boundary line is too.
The signs are actually at the boundaries now.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, I physically checked them. Again, let's say when you look at the boundaries of the town, the boundaries, although they extend south, do not extend on the highway south. So it extends. If you're looking at 845, our town boundary extends on the west side of 845 south to the second side road south of Cottonwood Drive. But it doesn't include the 845. There are actual town limits on the east side of 845 start at the end of the 2.6 acres, which is quite a bit further north, very close to the storm ponds, really, in Cottonwood.
So that's being looked into.
That's, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Last chance for questions, comments. Okay, well, thank you again, Mark. I'm still looking for someone to make a motion that council receive Coaldale District Emergency Services 2022 year-end report as information. Councillor Saylor, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, carried unanimously. Thank you. So that concludes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
That concludes the open portion of the meeting. I will be needing a motion that council move into closed session at 8:42 p.m. in accordance with section 197-4-B of the Municipal Government Act to discuss matters exempt from disclosure for item 13.1, subject to section 16, business interests of a third party, and section 25, economic and other interests of a public body. Item 13.2, subject to section 27, privileged information, and item 13.3, subject to section 23, local public body confidences. Can I get someone to sponsor that motion? Councillor Reese, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. We'll take a 5-minute